Oh my god, holy crap, it's me again. Here it is. My favorite season of LA by Night, what I consider to be lightning in a bottle, what I consider to be the absolute best season, the best everything that LA by Night has to offer, all wrapped up into one season, season 3 of LA by Night. So what's important to note here is that a couple of things happened that isn't really available online anywhere between seasons 2 and seasons 3. And unfortunately, I can't even find, at one time there was a sort of wrap up or a recap, written one on the Geek and Sundry's website, which doesn't seem to be there anymore, and if it is, I'm just too stupid to find it. So I'm going to do my best to sort of tell you what has happened between season 2 and season 3. So when we ended off with season 2, the very last epilogue of season 2 is Jasper and Eva and Fiona and Chloe, that whole thing where Eva breaks her blood bond and Chloe becomes Eva's ghoul, and that's the whole thing that happens. But right after that, and I mean like really, really close after that, the entire coterie head off to Anaheim. It was at WonderCon, I believe in 2018, could be wrong about that, where they all go to Anaheim, which is a city in California, which is where Disneyland is, right? Disneyland in California and Disney World in Florida for my non-American viewers, of which I have quite a few. They go there specifically to talk to the Baron of Anaheim, who is named Amethyst. And Amethyst is a character that exists in the revised edition LA by Night book from ages and ages ago, from the 90s. She's a K-Tiff, but she's presented a little bit differently here. There's a few other characters that are also in that book that are here. The Los Angeles by Night source book is where you can first hear about like Jeremy McNeil, who, if you played Bloodlines 1, you hear about him a couple of times. Nines Rodriguez isn't in that book, neither is Therese Vorman or Isaac Abrams, but people who are in that book is like Smiling Jack, everyone's first or second favorite Bruja, depending on how you feel about Nines in Bloodlines. Also, you hear about Tara Kearney, who I talked ad nauseum about in season 1. She's in that book. But what's important concerning going to Anaheim is that in the Los Angeles by Night sourcebook, the last time we hear about Amethyst, or the only time we hear about Amethyst really, is that she's the Baron of Santa Ana, not Anaheim. I don't know the proximity, if those things are really, really close to each other, but it appears that now she is either both the Baron of Santa Ana and Anaheim, or has just moved shop over to Anaheim. There's also a character in that when they all go on this road trip, they stop over somewhere to meet with someone before they meet with the Baron, who is part of her entourage, let's call it, named Zipper. Now, what's interesting is that Jason definitely portrays Zipper as like a Nosferatu, but I don't think he's Amethyst's child, but he might be. I could be wrong about that. He's either Amethyst's child or Amethyst's grandchild. He's Caitiff, right? Because there's this really interesting thing about Caitiff where, let's just go into every random tangent I possibly can. So Caitiff are super interesting. It depends on your point of view. If you're talking to the Camarilla and even some Anarchs, they're like, well, they're wrong. They came out wrong. They don't have any inherent disciplines, and they also don't have any inherent flaws, unlike all the other clans. So like, they're wrong. But you ask other people, and probably a lot of Caitiffs, and they would consider themselves more like closer to Cain, the progenitor of vampires, because they are more like true vampires, because they can learn any discipline and without a teacher. That's important. And also they don't have any flaws. The inherent flaws and weaknesses and inherent disciplines of all the clans that we see in Vampire the Masquerade come from the third generation, meaning Cain's grandchilder. Because that's all. God, it's even a longer story. They like sort of broke off and killed the second generation, Cain's childer, and blah, 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 blah. And they sort of branched off into their own, let's say, bloodlines, right? And so that's where, as it's gone through the generations, that's where all this crap comes from. But Caitiff are just purely that way. And what's interesting is to make a Caitiff, you could be embraced by a Caitiff, and then you are Caitiff, right? But for the longest time, the idea was that the only way to make a Caitiff was that something went wrong in the process of the embrace. They really didn't know what went wrong, but like a Nosferatu could embrace someone and that person doesn't have any ghastly appearance, or a Malkavian could embrace someone and they are like painfully sane, and they are often like synonymous with thin bloods and stuff. But what's interesting is that now, of course, we know, and it's much more common knowledge, that caitiff can beget other caitiffs. So it's much less occurrence that something goes wrong in the embrace and therefore comes out a caitiff, and it's more likely that caitiff are just making their own childer and continuing on their own bloodline, if you want to call it that. Yes, they meet with Zipper at a car wash, I think. Like I said, Jason portrays him as a Nosferatu, not as a caitiff. Not really sure why. Eventually they go and they meet Amethyst, and to be honest, it's not like a super pertinent thing that happens for LA by Night. The only pertinent thing that happens because of it is the situation compounded with what happened with Chloe, and then what happens to her in Anaheim causes her to need to take a break away from Los Angeles. She needs to like get away and like reground herself. When they're meeting with the Baron for, I guess, to just sort of consolidate like power among the Anarchs, like in case things start popping off, and things are already starting to pop off. Anarch v Camarilla in Los Angeles, I guess, was the point of that, but also, you know, just to have a live show for the fans, right? Let's be realistic here. Amethyst holds court at medieval times, right? Which, if you don't know what that is, if you're not an American, there are a lot of themed restaurants in the States where basically you sit there and you watch a show and you eat food. There's like Pirate's Voyage is another one that I'm familiar with, which is a pirate show that you watch while you sit there and you eat pirate themed food. But from medieval times, it is exactly that. It's a lot of jousting, and it's just another horse show. Okay, let's just all be honest here. It's just a bunch of horse shows. Pirate's Voyage being the exception there. Just a lot of horse shows, right? It's for the horse girls. Where you eat like I imagine. I've never been to any of them, so I don't really know. I'm just going off of like the zeitgeist of just something that you inherently figure out living in America. Turkey legs, and I'm guessing some sort of alcoholic beverage that's supposed to resemble ale or mead, is what the fare is, right? So they're all there, and the humans are there, and they're having their little meeting with the Baron. And the Green Knight, I am guessing that the knights who perform are all different colored, and you can root for your favorite knight, I'm guessing, is what happens. And Green Knight came up to Eva, asked for her favor, ended up winning the joust, comes back and stabs her with the jousting stick, and a fight breaks out with this Green Knight, who is very clearly either being possessed by someone or is a minion of someone, but wants to get Eva, wants to get her got, right? But we really don't know the circumstances, and I do have a video all about it, all the theories that I have come across on the internet, and my own theory of what I think it is on the internet for you to watch. If I remember to link it, I didn't remember to link in the last video, or I'll put it in the description. I'll try and remember, I really will. If I don't, roast me in the comments, please. So that's all done. And so Eva takes off, goes to New York. So, yeah, which is where Eva goes, by the way. She does mention it, yeah. Eva takes off, she goes to New York. New York is where she's from, and also where she was embraced, specifically at Woodstock, but that isn't something that ever gets mentioned in LA by Night proper. That can be found in a Reddit thread, which I'll also try and remember. Jingle, jingle, come on, Huddy, remember this when you're editing. I'll also try and remember to edit. The description of all the LA by Night crew did a very lengthy and very awesome and detailed Q&As on a Reddit thread, which I will attempt to find for you. And one of those things revealed is that Eva was embraced at Woodstock in 1969. Another thing that happened, so while Eva's gone, the coterie sort of deal with stuff around Los Angeles, specifically stuff that has to do with the Valkyries. I'm going to be real honest. I was really banking on that little description being up still from Geek and Sundry, because I don't remember a huge ton of it. And it's not hyper relevant either, but it will help because there will be characters that will be inserted in here that is just going to be, you don't know who they are because they were never introduced, but all of the coterie know who they are because they were involved. I think there were 3 or 4 private sessions, and they obviously had interactions with them as Jason, playing them as NPCs. So 2 of these NPCs that they met, who are going to be the most relevant, were Sanchez and Rychek, and they were sort of involved. They're involved in the Camarilla. They're sort of a cleanup crew, let's say, and they for any masquerade breaches that happen. And they sort of work unofficially for it's hard. They sort of work unofficially for the Scourges at the moment in the Camarilla, who we don't know who they are yet. But before we can get to all of that, the opening of season 3 is maybe one of the best openings of LA by Night. Now I'm gonna be bold and brave and say it's actually the best opening of LA by Night. It starts off with Victor has made all of the preparations that he needs to make to move over to his new club that he just opened in the valley. Now, the club he owned before the Maharaja was technically still in Baron Abrams' territory. I don't think I ever mentioned that, has been like the base of operations for the coterie for the first 2 seasons. And he has been making preparations throughout season, like sort of more minorly and just sort of talking about it in season 1 to actively doing it in season 2 to it finally being ready here in the beginning of season 3, where he wants to have a club in his own domain, obviously outside of Abrams' purview, called Club Maharani. So he's got that all set. They're all ready to move over there the next night. They just have a couple of things still here in Maharaja that, they can take their time with getting like some valuables, some important documents inside of a safe and things of that nature. But essentially they're all going to sleep at Maharaja the night before, the day before moving over. So everybody's there, everybody's sleeping there. And also it's a safety thing because Jason does say in the beginning that things be popping off. He doesn't use those exact words, but I'm paraphrasing. That there have been skirmishes, especially since Annabelle has rallied a lot of the anarchs to the cause of kicking the Camarilla out of Los Angeles. There has been a lot of street fights and breakouts and kerfuffles and things of that nature. So it's also a safety thing. What happens is that someone sets off a bomb underneath Club Maharaja. I assume it's underneath. I assume it's not there, but I assume it was also done by ghouls during the day or servitors of some kind. Everybody wakes up for the sound of an explosion going on. Now, what happens when a vampire has to wake up during the day? When there is an emergency of some kind, when they are being threatened, even during the daytime, you need to make humanity rolls to wake up, right? Because you're not supposed to be awake during the day. You're supposed to be asleep. So it requires an effort to do so. They all do successfully wake up, and Campbell is also there. Campbell does his best to get everybody up and out. Back in season 2, the finale of season 2, I mentioned that Victor took Nellie's limo. And I mentioned it was crazy that was going to come up again. And it's going to come up again in season 4, which is even crazier. This one limo. Victor takes Nellie and some of his ghouls, and they head down through the tunnels to get to the garage where the car is. Whereas Jasper and Annabelle, they head up to the Victor's office to get whatever valuable paperwork and stuff. I actually can't remember what's in there, what valuable things are in there. I think maybe the hunter weapons. Whatever it is, it's an intention to keep the masquerade, to get it out of there. Like, they have to get it. I think it's a safe. So Victor and Nellie head down to the tunnel to get to the cars to get the fuck out of there, to have one of the ghouls drive them. Jasper, Annabelle, and Campbell head up to the office to get the safe. And what's really funny is that Jason, I love it. There's, as a storyteller, there is just something that happens with the brain when you are doing, especially an action scene, there is like a lot going on. And sometimes the brain just and can see that you're like might be a little bit overtaxed with how much is going on and keeping track of everything, that the brain just tries to simplify things for you and makes you make an oopsie. So Campbell's in 2 places at once. Campbell is also with Victor and Nellie and also with Jasper and Annabelle. I'm for the which Jason later makes a joke saying that like Campbell's a mage, which don't get me started on talking about mage. I love mage. I love it so much. Jason is so lucky he never mentioned changelings once in 5 seasons of LA by Night, because I'd be all over blabbing about it. I'd be yapping about it right now. So for the ease of this, I'm going to say that Campbell was with Jasper and Annabelle, because he was like for the start. And it was some point later when they had reached the car that Campbell was there. So we're gonna say for ease of that, and that other ghouls were following Nellie and Victor, or employees. So let's start with Nellie and Victor. They get to the tunnel. A couple of the ghouls or servitors die because, as I said, I think the bomb was set off underground in the sewer system maybe, and the sort of a lot of the foundation of the Maharaja is actually crumbling and rocks are falling and brick and things of that nature. Nellie and Victor easily make it through. Victor has fortitude, Nellie has celerity, but these the other people are just human beings and they get crushed. They do make it to the car, and they do have to continually make rolls to stay awake and not pass out and then just be, you know, open for the sun to burn them, fry them alive. But yes, it was a good tactic for Victor to take this bulletproof and sunproof limo, because it did end up saving them in the end. So Nellie can feel the ways about things about that, but you know, you have to give credit where credit is due. Nellie is like fails a frenzy check, because even though they are behind tinted glass, it's still not like perfectly away from the sun, and they are aware, like really aware, that they need to actually leave the safety of the dark and head out into the broad sunlight in this car. And it's terrifying for a vampire. There's nothing scarier than the sun, maybe fire a really close second. They have to make frenzy checks, and Nellie fails hers, and she just starts going feral in this car. And Victor attempts to calm her down with dominate and just can't reach past the animal nature of the beast, and she starts tearing the shit out of this car. So I think it was perfectly done by Jason, a perfect decision for this, because she hates that limo. It reminds her of her sire who terrorized her during her life and unlife. Victor gets them to safety, gets the accolades for getting the limo and getting them to safety, and Nellie also gets a pat on the back for just tearing the shit out of it with her nails. I love it. Meanwhile, speaking of scary things, back at the club, everything's on fire, right? And everybody is gonna burn up. Jasper's really strong, Annabelle's really strong. They both have potence, so that's good. They rip the safe out of wherever the fuck it was in Victor's office, and they jump over onto the dance floor. I believe Jasper hurts himself, but he carries Annabelle jumps with the safe. Jasper lands a little less gracefully with Campbell, making sure that he's okay, damages himself. They get down to the sewers, but here's the problem. The problem is that where the sewers are from the Maharaja, which, you know, Jasper's very familiar with the sewers, as a Nosferatu, just based on like the location where he lives. They actually have to go outside for a second to get to the actual sewer entrance that they need to get to. You know, it's no problem for Campbell. Campbell can run right out there. He's a ghoul, but he's a human. And so these two vampires, and this is a little bit different than Nellie and Victor, who sort of have the, you know, even though their beasts are still terrified because their beasts are super aware they're heading out in the daytime, they are still safe inside of that car. Jasper and Annabelle have to head out bare-skinned and stay awake and run into the sewer grate as vampires in broad daylight. It's like noon. It's really terrifying. And Erika Ishii does this amazing like feral scream as, you know, Jasper's urging her to just fucking run, and Jason playing Campbell is just like, get in this, you know, holding the sewer, or had pulled the grating off and is just like, get in. I mean, it's just an awesome fucking scene. Jasper, of course, too, they both take damage, sun damage, because duh. You know, all this chaos is going on, but like they did, I believe, make a plan to meet at Griffith College, their old feeding ground. And I believe it still belongs to them, or they've sort of just given it over to Ramona, but you know, still it's a safe place that they can go to where no one in the Camarilla should know about it. And so they have to make their way on foot, which is, you know, again, a lot slower than driving in a limo and having someone drive you. And in case you know, fall asleep while being out in the day, it's cool. Whereas Annabelle and Jasper have to trudge on foot, and unfortunately, and again, keep making these rolls to stay awake. And unfortunately, Jasper does fall asleep. So Annabelle with Campbell, and she gives the safe to Campbell, and it's too heavy for Campbell, but he eventually, you know, he manages to carry it. Annabelle carrying Jasper. They all make it to Griffith College. They all crawl into the limo when Annabelle and Jasper get there, because Nellie and Victor have fallen asleep, but they were safe, right, in the garage. And they all crawl into the limo on top of each other and pass out. And it's just the best. Now, let me be perfectly clear. I know everyone's like, Honey knows everything about LA. I don't. No one says that. No one says I know everything about LA by Night. That's not true, because I got roasted in the season 1 when I got Tara Kearney mixed up with some random gangrel. Season one was not for me. It was like, I mean, you know, I appreciate season 1 for a lot of things, but like when I do rewatches of LA by Night, which I do often, I always skip over season 1. I skip it because I just it doesn't capture the magic for me like season 2 and season 3 do, and further on. I binged the entire first 3 seasons of LA by Night in 2 weeks, back Christmas 2019, right before, the thing happened, the global thing. I binged it 2 weeks before, 2 weeks during like the Christmas holiday season. I was sick and I had nothing else to do. I couldn't make videos and do, my YouTube stuff like I was doing real heavy back then. So I had nothing to do but sit there and watch LA by Night. And I binged it in 2 weeks and became immediately obsessed. And when I saw this episode, I think I can pinpoint to where I went, oh, I think I need to be a storyteller. Like, I had never played LA by Night. Never played LA by Night, my God. I had never played Vampire the Masquerade before watching LA by Night. I had make lore videos and videos about bloodlines and stuff like that, but I never actually played yet. And I said to myself, oh, I think I need to be a storyteller. And I said that much more than I said I need to be a player. I said, because I want to do this. Like, just the look on everybody's faces, on B-Dave and Alex's face, and how all of this went down, and how everyone had to be quick and think on their feet and just, push the drama and the chaos and the theatrics of it all. I mean, I was like, oh, this is what I want to do forever. Oh, holy crap. This is all I want to do. I could pinpoint it right here. And Jason is such a genius when it comes to masterminding these types of scenarios. It's brilliant. It's perfect. I could talk about just that opening probably for the whole 2 hours of this video, but I won't, I promise. So everybody wakes up, everybody heals. Of course, a little harder for Campbell to heal. Campbell has taken some damage and burns, but everybody wakes up. Everybody is essentially okay. They need to meet with 2 people, Rychek and Sanchez, because they get wind both from Greg and from Fiorenza that it was the Camarilla who set off this bomb in the Maharaja. And Rychek and Sanchez are 2, as I said, they're sort of fixers of the Camarilla. They sort of like deal with any masquerade breaches. They sort of make things go away, clean up crime scenes, however you'd want to phrase it. And they've sort of made a very tentative alliance, is maybe too strong of a word, but a sort of a tentative relation between them where they can at least talk to them or get things from them about what the goings on in Camarilla in exchange for other things. It's really hard to get a read on them, and maybe it would be easier if those private sessions weren't private sessions and were actually something we saw on screen, because eventually they figure out that Rychek and Sanchez have been working with them, and the Scourges want him, and like they sort of try and be like, give them to us, and like we won't fucking kill you all or whatever it is that Aurora is threatening them with. And Annabelle's just so resistant to give him over. I believe it's Sanchez. Give Sanchez over to the Scourges, and maybe it's just out of a principle thing of just like not working with the Camarilla or whatever. But I feel like while you're watching it, especially season 3, as much as I say that season 3 is just the best, it's lightning in a bottle, it's my favorite, I could watch it over and over and over again, never get bored. There's just something missing. There's like, it feels like there's like pieces of information that are just not available to the audience, and something gets lost in the motivations or the reactions of the characters because those pieces are missing. But there's nothing we can do about that now. I just want to keep putting that out there. If you hear me say weird things about Rychek and Sanchez, like, you should fucking know who they are. I don't know who they are. I'm just giving you the information. What do you want from me? So they head to this warehouse to meet with them, and the meeting goes. Oh, I should also mention, Annabelle notices because they eventually they go to Jasper's Haven because Jasper needs to feed, and like, around Griffith College, Annabelle feeds, and I think Victor feeds from Campbell because Victor has a specific feeding type, predator type, where he needs to feed on people who know who he is. Nellie feeds off of like one of the fashion students here, blah 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 blah. But Jasper doesn't feed on him. He's like, I need to go to Haven to feed, they all know now that he feeds on other kindred and he's got somebody there. So he heads to so they all head to his haven, and Jasper does indeed. Now they don't know that he is taking people off the street, embracing them and turning them into vampires and then eating his own children. They don't know they eat your darlings. They don't know he's eaten his darlings yet. They don't know that. They will, but they don't know it yet. They think it's just someone for Abrams, right? And Jasper doesn't just eat, like take a snack. He kills him. Delicious. Yum yum. Inside of his haven, they notice that Jasper has a lot of books on the occult, and that he is quite the smarty pants. Someone tries to call me while I'm talking about LA by Night. No. They notice that he's quite the smarty pants, that he's got a lot of books on occult, that he can read Latin. Annabelle notices that, one, he's wearing a ring that he keeps fiddling with, and Annabelle has noticed that Eva hasn't been around. He doesn't want to talk about it. It's fine. We'll figure out where Eva's been in like a minute, so it doesn't matter. But it also notices that there is a picture that's sort of like put away, like out of the way, of Jasper as a human before he was embraced, and the Chloe. Now Annabelle doesn't know who Chloe is, but he notices that it's not Eva, and he notices it's when Jasper was alive, and she doesn't want to talk about it. Jasper doesn't want to talk about his feelings. Jasper doesn't want to talk about his personal life. Jasper doesn't want to talk about his past. They head over to this warehouse to meet with Rychek and Sanchez, and what happens is that they get attacked by the Scourges. Now we have met one of these Scourges, of which there are 2, back in season 2, really early in season 2, episode 2 of season 2, when they were at the Grove, and Nellie meets a La Sombra in the shadows who was with the sheriff, and that was Rodrigo. Now, a Scourge, in some domains, they're called hounds. It really depends. I believe in New York and Chicago, they're called hounds. I could be wrong about that. Again, roast me alive in the comments. I'm into it. But basically, they are the muscle of the sheriff. Now, where the sheriff is more of like an adjudicator and a justice seeker, is the person to investigate, figure out what's going on, drag the culprit or culprits in front of the court, and then once the prince has dispensed judgment, then dispenses justice. The Scourges operate generally under the sheriff, sometimes under the prince, again, depends where you are, where they're basically the sheriff's muscle. So if there's something big that's going on, the sheriff will go like, all right, something's going on. I want you two out there cracking skulls while I deal with, the different minutia that I need to deal with as the, higher up person of the court. So go out there among the anarchs and crack some fucking skulls. And that's what the Scourges will do. Scourges also in a lot of domains are like, their job is to basically, the sheriff's like, all right, got a lot of thin bloods, make sure you cull any thin bloods you see. And they're like, sweet, nice. And so they'll just be out there killing thin bloods left, right, and center. That's pretty much what New York's a deal with the Scourges, right? Is their job is to get rid of fucking thin bloods. But again, it's different from domain to domain. And at the moment, the Camarilla in Los Angeles is being rebuilt again for like the 3rd fucking time since LA's founding. So like, who the fuck knows what they're doing over there and what they're, at the moment they have to be answering to the prince directly or someone else because there is no sheriff at the moment. At least none that they know about yet, right? But we're gonna get to that. You gotta wait. Stop rushing me. There isn't just Rodrigo here, though. There is also Aurora here. I believe Rychek doesn't make it out, or something happens to Rychek. Sanchez definitely makes it out, though. And it becomes pretty apparent that these 2 Scourges are La Sombra, which everyone is very scared of. Why are the La Sombra in the Camarilla? That's kooky, that's crazy. Nominally, the La Sombra were always associated with the Sabbat, which is sort of, there's, if you want to be really technical about it, if you want to be like technically correct, the best kind of correct, there are like 5 sects or factions in Vampire the Masquerade. There's technically more, but we're just dealing with 5th edition here, so like, don't come at me. Or do, but I warn you, if you bully me, I may fall in love with you. So in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, we have the Camarilla, right? We've been talking about them. Ivory Tower, right? Corporate, hierarchical, terrible, love them. Anarchs, they're more like revolutionaries, and they just want to, they sort of vie for kindred freedom and rebellion, and they don't like the idea that the Camarilla is, all hierarchical and like there's elders controlling everything, and like all the neonates are down below beneath them. The anarchs are really funny though, because like they have barons, and you could be like, well, isn't this a baron just a prince? And they'll be like, no, it's not. Shut up, pop you in the mouth if you say that again. Shut your fat gob, but anarchs basically represent like much closer to like kindred freedom. They're still big on the masquerade and all that stuff, but represent more opportunities for younger kindred to like get a leg up in the world, so to speak, right? If you want to be technical, there's also the autarchus. Now, they're not like a collective of anything, but you can be autarchus, which is basically being an independent. Now, that's much harder than, believe it or not, it's much harder being an autarchus than you would think. You would think like, well, I don't want to be Camarilla and I don't want to be Anarch. I'll just be my own thing. But, you know, that's the thing, though. It's much more dangerous to be all alone because there's a lot more shit that there's always going to be someone bigger out there that can just be like, oh, you're all alone and you have no friends. And if I kill you, literally no one will notice or care. Well, give me that neck, boy. That literally will know, you know, can be very dangerous. So you need to be a kindred of significant power or prestige or have some sort of connection somewhere to be truly autarchus. 4, there's the Sabbat, right? The Sabbat, they are terrible. You know, we can pitter patter about the way the Sabbat has been represented in the books over the years, but we're focusing on 5th edition here. So in general, in essence, the Sabbat are a cult. They are a murder cult, a death cult, if you will, an apocalyptic cult, if you will. They are pretty much focused on being the vampires they truly are. They don't like the masquerade. They don't like vampires who pretend to be something other than vampires. They look at human beings as food, and all they want to do is bring about vampire supremacy on this earth, and they want to eat the antediluvians and older kindred like Methuselah's, like kindred who are really, really old, like thousands of years old. They want to suck them dry for the power, and because they are big on Daddy Cain, they think Daddy Cain's the best. And Daddy Cain, as in Cain and Abel Cain, as in the progenitor of vampires, according to some vampires, he was not cool when his grandchild rose up and killed his children, killed their sires. He was not cool with that, and he very much condemned all of those actions, right? He did like, he could have just like killed them all, but he didn't. He was like so morose and sad, very emotional about the whole thing, and so he gave them advice on how to live their own lives and then just disappeared, just, you know, became the absentee father that we all have experiences with, I'm sure. What? Anyway, they're big on the Dark Father, and they're like, well, if we kill all the antediluvians, Daddy Cain will come back for us. Ooh, woo, Daddy Cain. And they're crazy, too. That's important. Okay, so then the final faction would be the Ashira. Now, I can talk about the Ashira in Legacy Edition, but again, we're not talking about Legacy Edition. We're talking about the current edition, which is 5th, and we don't really know a huge hell of a lot about the Ashira. What we do know about the Ashira is, 1, they're having a bad time in the Gehenna War, which is basically whatever is happening with the Beckoning and the Sabbat, you know, rising up and being like, yeah, woo woo. we aren't doing our weird structured thing of like taking over cities and archbishops and this, that, and dirty secrets of the Black Hand, blah, 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 all the stuff that we were doing in the older books. No, now we're just crazy and murderous, and, you know, we're just like, kill everybody, bring about Gehenna, woo woo. That's sort of their whole deal. So they're having a bad time with dealing with that. The Camarilla is not having any more fun with it either. But because both the Camarilla and the Ashira are both fighting the Gehenna War and, you know, losing ground and dealing with all sorts of, you know, and then of course it's the Second Inquisition, but that's not kindred faction. You know, they're also dealing with that too. That's also really bad, causing a lot of problems. They have decided to come together as they put up a blood marriage, or the Vermilion Wedding, if you will, which is mentioned in season 1, by the way. Victoria Ash and Tigerian. I could be wrong about how that name is pronounced. They have come together in a marriage. He is like a infamous Banu Hakim in the Ashira, very high up, very old. And Victoria Ash is also as infamous in the Camarilla for like just being fucking cunty and fabulous. And they're married. They're blood married to each other now, as a sort of like an alliance between the two factions. So be like, got your back, you got my back, right? Because these two people from our organization, even though Camarilla is different depending on where you are, got married to each other and drank each other's blood, so we cool, right? The La Sombra were part of the Sabbat, were part of the woo-woo, but they were more like, again, Legacy Edition, where there was a time where like New York was run by the Sabbat, and they were very hierarchical in themselves. Again, it's sort of playing into that same funny ideology that the Anarchs like, no, we're totally different than the Camarilla. Well, yeah, we have have a baron, but he's not a prince, you know, and the Sabbat was the same way. Like, no, we totally hate the Camarilla, but well, yeah, we have an archbishop, but you know, it's not a prince, you know. But that has sort of moved away. That sort of deteriorated away because the Sabbat really don't have, I mean, if you want to be logical about it, they really don't have the capacity to like sit around and be all like business oriented and, you know, executive suites and shit like that, because, you know, they're kind of always waging war, right? And that's why they have shock troops and shovel heads and stuff. And they just really, you know, like in the long run, it would be really difficult to keep that up for any length of time. Apparently they got it worked out at one time, but now they're back to just being like, well, let's just fucking, you know, why don't we just all kill these fucking people? Sort of where they're at now. And so the Lasombra saw that as a sinking ship, right? Rats fleeing a sinking ship. And so they were like, well, we got to get the fuck out of here. And so they decided to go rap, 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 knock on the Camarilla's door and be like, besties. And there is precedence for Lasombra being in the Camarilla. Like very, very, very old Lasombra, the child of the original antediluvian Lasombra, Montano, was infamously never involved in the Sabbat. He was like not cool way back in the day, way back in the day when there was like an anarch revolt and stuff in the 15th century. He was like not cool with what was happening with like Mika Vikos, who was like, well, you know, we got to just fucking, why don't we just kill these fucking people? We have to fucking kill all the antediluvians and stuff like that. And his clan, the Lasombra clan, also were like, oh, why don't we just kill these fucking people? And all just like stormed into where Lasombra was and supposedly ate their own antediluvian in a mass diablerie thing. And he wasn't cool with that because he just wasn't. Then he very much, you know, when the Convention of Thorns happened and the Camarilla was established and blah, 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 he was very much always like, I want to be with you guys. I don't want to be with those crazy people. Those people are nuts. Have you seen them? So there's precedence for Lasombra. It's very rare, but for Lasombra being in the Camarilla. And so, yeah, they came to some agreement. I mean, again, depending on where you are. Now you can embrace Childer directly into the Camarilla, but at the time that all this was going on, those older Lasombra definitely had to do something to get in. In Chicago, for example, you had to present another member of the Lasombra, the Sabbat, to the prince as a sacrifice. Right, to show that you really had switched sides or whatever, to show you really were the turncloaks you claimed to be. So I don't know what Aurora and Rodrigo had to do to get into the Camarilla. We'll never know, but they're in it now, baby, and they're scourges. And now the Coterie have to deal with two scary Lasombra and their scary Oblivion powers moving forward into season 3. But first, we have to start kissing. All right, so the episode that comes after this is called Love and Fear. Probably my favorite episode of every episode of LA by Night. It's actually the best because it's a Java episode. At least the second half is anyway. First half has to do with Annabelle and Mark. Now, we've established before, obviously, Annabelle's relationship with Eleanor, and we will find out later in the season what happened to Eleanor, at least veiled what happened to Eleanor. But Annabelle has been keeping her distance ever since what happened with Eleanor from Mark. And Mark is getting a little sick of it, right? He's a little sick of running where his girlfriend is and why she's not around and this, that, and the other thing. Nellie, Victor, and Annabelle are chilling out at the Maharani, all the safety measures being put in place so that it doesn't get exploded. And Mark shows up at his father's new club. He heard about it. You know, he has a very strained relationship with his father, and he doesn't realize that his father sees him quite often. It's just that Victor takes those memories away so that Mark doesn't get to remember it, which has left Mark, you know, with the impression that his father doesn't give a shit about him, which, you know, as I've said before, although I'm sure it doesn't feel good to Victor, he does it out of a good place. He does, I mean, it could not be more appropriate for keeping the masquerade. And also so that Mark won't get hurt and no one will use Mark against him, right? It's all perfectly valid and approved. Huddy approved behavior. But Mark is getting sick of it, and he's picked up now since that live stream that happened with Annabelle and his dad at the Grove, and now his father opening a new club. He is getting awful suspicious about what the hell is going on with his girlfriend. So he shows up at the Maharani. It's not open yet, but he's Victor's son and he gets in that way. And he sees Annabelle hanging out with his estranged father, who he does not like. And he's like, all right, what is going on? I couldn't even imagine what he must have been thinking all of this time. You're fucking my dad. So it comes to a point where a decision needs to be made, or Victor basically presents, and none of them are like upfront about what the fuck's going on. Victor presents Annabelle with the choice, and it's interesting that he gives this choice to Annabelle. Now, mechanically speaking, Mark, I believe, is a touchstone of both Annabelle and Victor. I really applaud B. Dave giving Annabelle this choice. I think I would be a little bit worse about it, as the character. At the end of the day, I really feel like Victor wants his children to be happy. Victor's such a complex character. He's so affable and friendly and just such a great joy to watch all the time. I think you forget that Victor is really complex in how he maneuvers his own life. And so he gives Annabelle the choice of whether he should remove Mark's memories of being here, but that would include removing his memories of Annabelle with the forgetful mind, right? You can rearrange memories. Or Annabelle tells him the truth and makes him her ghoul, so that he would essentially be loyal to her and under her control, and she would, in vampire parlance, she would be his property. She would own him. It's a hard decision to make. It really is. But Annabelle, again, is also a complex character, and she very much always errs on the side of what a human being should do. But this is one of the rare occasions where I think she makes the decision of not what a human being would do, but what a vampire would do. And it's a very interesting character development, because essentially the most altruistic thing, the best thing for Mark, right, would be for Annabelle to say, no, Victor, take his memories away from me. I don't want him to remember who I am. I don't want him to be in love with me anymore. I will love him from a distance. Keep him safe and away from this darkness. But Annabelle says, no, I don't want that. I've lost Eleanor and I've lost so much of my own life. I want him. I want this connection with him. I don't want to lose it. And that is the vampire in her speaking. That is not the human that she was speaking. So it's a very cool character development in this scene. And she tells him the truth of who she is and what she is, and what that vampires are real, and that his dad's a vampire, and the whole kit and caboodle. And she does give him the choice. She doesn't just immediately feed him her blood. But of course, he's no way. And that's what's so tragic about giving a person that choice, is that there's no way a human being could really understand the gravity of the situation he'd be getting himself into. But he is human, and he loves Annabelle, and he wants to be with her. And he doesn't really care what obstacles or, tribulations come through or because of it. So he agrees to drink her blood, and again, there's no way he could make that informed decision no matter how much you try and relay the information to him. You have to experience it, right? So he becomes her ghoul. Now in V5, now I don't know if Jason did this. In V5 as Raw, a ghoul cannot be a touchstone, because once they imbibe and continue to, they are not wholly human. They are a little bit stronger. They get a first level dot of whatever your highest discipline is, and they will live indefinitely as long as you keep feeding them, or they keep drinking vampire blood, even if it doesn't come from you. You can't have them as touchstones, and you lose them. And when you lose a touchstone in Vampire the Masquerade, you take stains on your humanity, which you have to make remorse rolls to remove. But I personally don't do it that way. I personally don't. In my opinion, as long as, because as a ghoul, and your Domitor can make you do things you wouldn't do as a human, right? So there is that caveat there. I personally don't do that. I have no issue allowing my players to have their ghouls as touchstones. It makes it all that much easy, because we want to tell a good story, right? More so than worrying about the minutia of mechanics. So it's much easier for me to hurt your feelings with a ghoul who's always around than maybe with a touchstone who's not always around, who's, got their own lives going on, and this, that, and the other thing. So I don't know if Jason had both Victor and Annabelle take stains for this decision. I would be super curious if that was true. I know B Dave has been in the last 2 videos that I've made. If B Dave is here and would let me know, that would be super. But either way, Mark becomes Annabelle's ghoul moving forward, and that will have repercussions, almost immediate repercussions, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. The second half of the episode has to do with Jasper and Eva. Well, also there is a very brief interlude in between those those two separated stories where Nellie goes and visits Abrams. And as I mentioned before, Nellie and Abrams are close. They are both Toreador. Abrams was her baron at one time, and they've worked together on different, almost said projects. They've worked together at different goals, ambitions for the barony, and personal ones, so much so that Abrams arranged for Nellie to learn blood magic. He's used her as a quote-unquote thespian spy. Those are his words. And she does go and talk to him, and he basically lets her know that he is feeling the beckoning, which is super interesting. Now the beckoning is a fun plot device for storytellers, right? There is not a whole lot. I'm going to be really honest. I work for the World of Darkness, but I'm always super honest. I tell you my true opinions about things. I'm a super huge fangirl. That is a true opinion. That's a true fact. In 5th edition, there's not a huge amount for you to hang your hat on when it comes to the rules of the lore. There's no real hard and fast, not like in the older books. The hard and fast rules aren't really there. I personally like it that way. I much prefer the World of Darkness to be as esoteric as possible, because then it allows me to tell any kind of story I want within it without really having to worry about actuallys in my comment section. Abrams is not someone we know of to be of a significant age, but again, that doesn't necessarily matter to the beckoning. There's a lot of theories on what the beckoning, whether it's generation or specific things within the bloodline that is calling out to you. It could be a generational thing, like you could be really young but have been embraced by someone of a much lower generation. It could be a bunch of things. There's theories because there's Helena in Chicago, who is like a Methuselah. She's like thousands of years old. She like regularly eats her childer, and she regularly engages in diablerie, and she believes that is keeping her away. For example, the Hecata do not experience the beckoning at all because there was a big rift where a lot of the older ones are now dead, and they have reformed all of the bloodlines of death into one clan of death called the Hecata. There's no more, just like the Giovanni clan doesn't exist anymore. So there's really no way to know if, but that could not be true. That's just what we know right now. That's just like speculation. And it's important in books, the World of Darkness books, that's all unreliable narration, right? So, and it's important to know that there's really no hard and fast rules. But what is hard and fast happening right now is Abrams is experiencing the beckoning. He's feeling a call to go east. It's like a soul pulling. He can't ignore it forever. Like, he's gonna ignore it for as long as possible. But basically he says to Nellie, when I go, and inevitably I'm going to, I can just feel it in my soul, I want you to take over the barony. And then Nellie is, I'm sure that's something that she wants. Kindred want power. That's just inherent to all of them. But Nellie is sad. She seems genuinely sad that he would be gone and just never able to get in touch with him again. Often the beckoning, they feel like, is, again, speculatory, going off to fight in the Gehenna War that's happening all over the world. But again, we can't prove that. That can't be a proven thing. So then the second half of the scene takes place. Eva is back. She's back from New York. She's back to see Jasper, and she's back to stay. And it's very sweet. It's amazing. I think I said this before in a recap that I did, or when I talked about either Eva or Jasper in the character things. I can't do it justice just talking about it because it's so awesome. Jasper, relays to Eva that he's so sad that, without saying it, that he doesn't want her to leave again, and that he didn't like that she left. And, Eva's like, I don't want to leave again. And I came back because I followed my heart, and my heart led me back to you. And I'm just like, oh. Talk about the ring, right? The ring is inscribed with a Russian inscription that says Moi Begrovia Libastok, which just means my crimson petal. We'll find out the origins of that ring later. He does attempt to ask about it, but she doesn't give a whole... She says that she didn't put the inscription in, that it was given to her that way. But she doesn't go into a whole lot of detail about it yet. She will later. Jasper has made sure that there's nobody in cages when she's there. He really wants to show her the labyrinth, right? That's what she's here to see. So he does take her down into the labyrinth, shows her how, twisted and MC Escher-esque crazy it is, takes her through the mirror that they travel through. And again, We don't know the origins of the mirror. We don't know what's going on with that. We never will, probably. When you travel through the mirror, it's like traveling through oblivion, right? Oh, let's not get talking about fucking Wraith again. When the La Sombra use their oblivion abilities, right? Let's talk about that. They use like Stygian shroud and like cover an area and anyone who's in the area in complete darkness. It's not just darkness, right? It's supernatural darkness. If you're a human being and you get caught in Stygian shroud, which is an oblivion power, you can't breathe, you can't see, you can't hear. It's like, it like cuts off all of your senses and the oxygen apparently in the room. I mean, Kindred, you don't need to breathe, so it's fine, but that's very much the sensation. And what it reminded me of when they went through the mirror is that, you know, like, even though they went in holding hands, as soon as they were in there, like Eva couldn't feel Jasper's hand. Eva couldn't sense where Jasper was. Turning on Sense the Unseen didn't do anything. Even if you have like Eyes of the Beast, you can't really see through that supernatural darkness. It's like someone put like a heavy gauze over you. The only way you can see through that supernatural darkness is with Eyes of Oblivion. Again, another Oblivion power that allows you to see that. Whatever it is very much related to the Sombra powers and essentially the primordial, maybe? This primordial force called Oblivion is very much part of this mirror. But yeah, they go through it and they find Zelios. Again, they don't know it's Zelios, but I've mentioned who Zelios is, the Master Mace. He's the guy that built the labyrinth, right? He's in torpor at the moment. He got like mauled by a werewolf, I guess, that was also down there. Not Strikes a Chord. Someone else. He's been in torpor down there since Jasper was embraced. He's still down there in torpor, and down there are also the ley lines. I think the labyrinth was more established by Jason later on than like in the beginning in the first season, because the ley lines are like right above the slab where he is. And like before they did, you know, there was no traveling through the mirror and they found Zelios and stuff. So like, blah, 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 blah. It's just, it's whatever. The Nexus room is where Zelios is and where the ley lines are. Then that also comes into play with the lore sheet of Zelios that I assume that Alex has, like where if you're near ley lines, like you don't get as hungry. And Jasper does mention that like when he's down there, he doesn't get as hungry. That's a dot in that lore sheet that you can take. Eva, you know, he wants to know what they are and he doesn't know that they're ley lines yet, but he's gonna, because Eva's gonna start touching them. Eva's gonna start touching them, playing around with them, and she realized they're ley lines. And basically ley lines again are something that is oh god, we could talk ages about what ley lines are, but you know, in terms of the world of darkness, it's basically like magical veins, let's call it veins, magical veins that stretch through the earth that like conjure around places of power that can be used to manipulate certain, you know, the areas above ground, right? Eva touches the ley lines and she can see all of Los Angeles. She can see a bunch of places in Los Angeles, and each little strand connects to a place, and you can manipulate them to make things happen to that place. And we'll get more into that in season 4 when Eva starts doing stuff with the ley lines a little bit more intensely. I'm not sure why this happens. It just might be because she wasn't prepared for it, or because she needs to be a little bit more careful with what she's doing, but she does get burned by the ley lines when she's using them. And it sort of triggers a reaction from the labyrinth where it gets filled with the same stuff that seems to be in the mirror, this black Oblivion-esque shadow stuff, right? So she downs an essence of air potion. She takes off with Jasper, floating away back to his haven. Oh my god. Oh my god, you ready? It's gonna be really good. In the air, and I think that Alex had forgotten they were floating around in the air. They start, you know, he's like checking her hand, making sure she's okay, and they get really close, and it gets really intimate, and they kiss. They do it. They kiss. It's the first kiss that they have, Jasper and Eva, and it's the greatest thing ever. And it's so funny because they kiss, and Jasper's growling. I think Alex had a cold during this episode because he does a lot of sniffing. I mean, Alex makes a lot of like animal noises as Jasper, which just adds to how fucking awesome Jasper is. But I think he had a cold during this because there's a lot of sniffing into the microphone. But it doesn't matter because they kiss, and it's beautiful and it's sensual, and I have it playing on a permanent loop. It lives rent-free in my brain on a permanent loop, and it will, even when I am in When I'm 90 in a nursing home and having dementia, I will remember this scene. I kid you not. And Jason Verrey's like, as you float back down to the ground, and you just see Alex just break character and laugh, which I love. Some of my favorite moments of Ellie by Night are when the actors break character, and especially Alex, because Alex is so very good at staying in character. Again, it's hard to tell the line between Alex and Jasper in those character breaking moments, because again, he's a professional actor, right? So he plays it off still as if it's Jasper doing it. But just seeing that absolute, joy, the breaking, the chortling, if you will, it's just, I love it so much. It really cemented to me that I'm like, oh my God, this show is really special. I'm going to make it my entire personality. Here I go. Eva asks, if she can come back, and Jasper's like, you don't even have to go, girl, move right in. I got room for you. And she's like, all right, maybe I'll stay for a while. And I'm like, oh my God, it's happening. Well, we've waited so long. We hasn't really been that long. I didn't have to wait at all, because the entirety of season 3 was already out when I started binging it. We're doing it live.
No, we'll do it live. Fuck it.
This is right after Christmas. I'm having these fun breakouts from wearing makeup and stuff all throughout Christmas. I get a nice reddening of my skin, and so I'm taking a break from wearing makeup because Germany, there's 3 days of Christmas, and lots of partying, lots of good times, and I wore makeup the whole week of Christmas. It's basically a week of Christmas, let's be honest. It's basically a week of Christmas. And I regret those decisions. Wasn't doing the skincare and taking it off appropriately, and now I have some fun breakouts like I'm a teenager again. It's awesome. 36. So yeah, you get me no makeup, you get the real Huddy. Not that I wear a lot of makeup anyway, but for Christmas I bought a whole bunch of new makeup, and I was going all out, and it was a mistake. I regret all of my decisions, but that doesn't matter because we're back here talking about Ellie by Night. All right, so now it's time to talk about the party, right? The Maharani, it's open for everybody, and Victor's gonna have a big party. He's invited lots of kindred. There's gonna be a lot of people there. Chocolate Drop, his favorite artist, is gonna be there. These two episodes are connected, right? They take place in the same night. They take place one right after each other. Great episode. Well, some of my favorite episodes are episodes, not saying nothing happens this episode, because lots of things happen, especially in the second half of the episode, but some of my favorite episodes are just chilling out in Anarch Elysium, which is sort of Victor's club. I would consider very much like Anarch Elysia. Yeah, big party. Jasper's in the walls. Victor sort of designed the Maharani to accommodate everybody. Everyone has their own rooms there, and Jasper has crawl spaces inside the walls to sort of sneak around the club and watch everyone, which, Jasper's very appreciative of, and that's super, super sweet. They chill, they party, and it becomes very aware that one, Sanchez, we mentioned Sanchez and Rychek before, that Rychek is, I believe, dead or not around. Something happened to him, because, as I said, they were in the warehouse meeting with the Coterie, and the La Sombra Scourges showed up. Right? And so obviously they know that Rychek and Sanchez are working with the Anarch Coterie, which is a big no-no in the Camarilla. Sanchez shows up by himself, obviously wants protection. And of course, who is also there is Rodrigo and Aurora. They are the two La Sombra Scourges. They're siblings, and they're badasses. They're dancing out on the dance floor. Rodrigo's dancing with Annabelle. And as Rodrigo's dancing with Annabelle, Mark shows up. Now, Mark's a brand new ghoul. He's been a ghoul for about a week. And of course, that blood is in his body, and he gets jealous immediately and runs out onto the dance floor. Nellie intercepts it, thankfully, just to keep him from making an absolute fool of himself, and also to keep Rodrigo and Aurora unaware that Mark is a valuable human being to Annabelle. But unfortunately, that plan doesn't go exactly the way that they wanted to. Jasper also gets out onto the dance floor. He starts shaking his booty with Aurora, and it's amazing. They have a dance-off, like a violent dance-off, because Jasper has a messy critical, I think, a couple of times in that episode. I'm sort of combining both episodes together, because there's a lot of stuff that happens, Vivi is there. If you've played Bloodlines, you know who Vivi is. She used to run... Ooh, I actually can't remember the name of the strip club. Vesuvius? That could be wrong. In Bloodlines, she does other stuff now, and she's like the adopted child of Abrams, not like... I was supposed to say biological child. Like, he didn't embrace her, but she's like an adopted child. Miranda's there for no reason. Chaz's former ghoul, who is now Nellie's ghoul. Lavender is there. or Chelsea is her name. Gary Golden's there, but really what like their presence outside of Lavender are like a little bit inconsequential. Really matters is the main coterie and Mark being there. The dance happens. Jasper, I mean, you could say Jasper won the dance off, but I really would call it a tie. Eventually, the Scourges want to meet with Victor, so Victor takes him up to his office, and the whole coterie go up there to talk. And during that, as everyone's making their way up to the mezzanine, let's call it, to Victor's office, Mark stops to have a drink with Lavender, you know, just two ghouls who are just sort of getting to know each other. They both have similar backgrounds now that they're both ghouls. Chelsea's been a ghoul for a while. And out loud, in character, Mark says, like, yeah, Victor's my dad, and this is his club. And there's a moment where you just see Jason making a dice roll, obviously for like heightened senses, because clearly it's loud. It's a club, right? And even when you use heightened senses mechanically in the game as a player, you need to make, if you're in some place that's loud, because heightened senses opens up all the senses, you need to make I think it's a resolve, an auspex roll to make sure that you can like focus in on a specific thing. And yeah, so they they head up to Victor's office and Mark too, and they talk about Sanchez. They want Sanchez. They also like lay down some law, which I have already discussed about the La Sombra. There's this really perfect line where Victor is like, you know, talking about how like the Ventru were like the original revolutionaries, which is crazy. I don't know where. Again, I go like, B Dave, you trolling again, buddy. I don't know where Victor picked that idea up from, but Jason playing Aurora just immediately snaps back. It's beautiful. I'm a huge La Sombra fan, by the way. It's like my favorite clan. And it's just like, you know, did you did you destroy your founder? Did you diablerize your founder? I don't think so, Ventru. We invented it. The young rising up against the old, and Aurora is correct. Invented it is strong, but in essence, the La Sombra and the Smeetsi were like the first quote unquote kindred revolutionaries. They were the first one. I mean, the Bruja, of course, were there rising up against the elders, blah blah blah. The La Sombra and the Smeetsi like took it way farther than the Bruja did, and they you know, went and dug up their progenitor of their clan, that in torpor and stuff, and they just went ham. The funny thing about World of Darkness, everything's an unreliable narrator, and nothing is really set in stone. There's not any hard and fast rules about the lore. Like there's a line that Jason says quite a lot, especially when we move into New York by night, where that everything is true and nothing is as it seems, and that is pretty. Like, that is exactly perfectly summing up what World of Darkness lore is like. But anyway, what they want is Sanchez, right? They want Sanchez, and they want to know, like, I guess they're sort of testing the Anarchs, and they want to know, like, are you going to turn Sanchez over? Most of them have no issue with turning Sanchez over. Annabelle does, though. Annabelle's like, no, we're not turning him over to you. You can't do that here in Victor's club. And Victor's also like, you can't do it in my club. They're like, you know, if you just get him out of the premises, then what happens to him happens to him. We don't care. But Annabelle wants to protect him or whatever. They head down, they take him down into the garage under the guise that they're going to escort him out of the club, but really they're going to, like, attempt to protect him and warn him about Aurora and Rodrigo. And that goes not at all according to their plan. They may be there for Sanchez, but I really think Sanchez is small fries to them. Really, they, remember how back when we were talking about season 2 and I was like, and Jasper's like, are you going to be the sheriff? And Jasper's like, no, I am not going to be your sheriff. Thank you so much for asking. Well, that's finally coming back to bite him because they want to punish him for that particular thing. Aurora, like out on the dance floor, like does sort of like hint that the Scourge answers to the sheriff, as if to say, like, if you like agree to be sheriff right now, like we'll do what you say. One, I don't know any domain that does that. Like that's not in any lore book I ever read. So like, I think she was bold-faced lying to him, knowing that Jasper wouldn't know any better. I mean, do Scourges answer to the sheriff? I mean, in most books, Scourges answer to the prince. Scourges, you know, where the sheriff is sort of the investigatory arm, the Scourges are like, oh, I don't even know how to put it. They're the ones out on the ground that are like, kill them. A prince says release the hounds, and the Scourges go wild, right? I don't really think that was a true statement to begin with. Unbeknownst to Jasper, there's already a new sheriff. They just don't know that yet, but we'll get to that in a minute. So down in the car garage, everything goes crazy. Everything breaks out. They Stygian shroud the place up real good. Rodrigo slips out of the room during Aurora Stygian shrouding the office. And of course, Mark and Chelsea can't breathe. They may be ghouls or they might be like humans plus, but they're still humans who need to eat and breathe and go to the bathroom and sleep. So what Stygian Shroud is a sort of unnatural, supernatural darkness that they just sort of like pull from any shadow in the room. And it's interesting because all the lights were up in this office here, but I don't know who shut the lights off. I don't know how the lights got shut off. It's never really said, but someone shuts the lights off, the lights get shut off. In essence, just being a La Sombra in the room, I would totally allow as a storyteller to just like manipulate your own bane into destroying technology. Pull from the shadows of the room to like a supernatural darkness that like unless you have your own discipline in Oblivion, your own powers in Oblivion, you can't see through it, you can't hear through it. And it's deadly to people who are mortals. You can't breathe in this supernatural darkness that is being pulled from the entropic primordial darkness that powers the Shadowlands, right? That's what it's being pulled from. So it's really deadly to living people. But of course, vampires aren't alive. And down in the parking garage where Sanchez, Annabelle, and Jasper are, Rodrigo does the same thing. So it's the same sort of thing where Annabelle and Jasper don't have any abilities. Like, I think Nellie uses heightened senses, and they'll explore that later in the Memorium episode. But if you have, like, heightened senses or Eyes of the Beast or something that allows you to see in darkness, it helps. But it's sort of like looking through, like, a gossamer curtain. You know, it's not perfect. But if you have Oblivion Sight, which allows you to see in supernatural darkness, then like you're good. So down in the garage, Jasper's getting shanked by Rodrigo, which is just a funny image to think that like Rodrigo just running behind Jasper and stabbing him like haha. But all Annabelle and Jasper can do is just sort of stand there and let it happen. Jasper trying to like be really zen about it and see if he could grab him like as he's being stabbed. But eventually, the shrouds dissipate, and both Sanchez and upstairs in the Maharani, Mark is gone, which is, of course, a panic. Now, they took Mark, obviously, to bait Victor because they overheard Mark saying that he's Victor's son. And they took Sanchez because he was one of the targets, he betrayed the Camarilla essentially by working with the Anarch, but he's got to go. In older editions, like more powerful La Sombra could really like travel great distances via shadow. They can basically, I think it's called like skating across the labyrinth, where basically they like dip real quick into the Shadowlands and then pop up somewhere else. And the labyrinth, and not Jasper's labyrinth, but the labyrinth that exists in the okay, I can't fucking talk about Wraith, right? I'm not gonna do it. I can't talk about Wraith anymore. I am putting a forbot on me talking about Wraith. It's not allowed anymore. I'll stop. I love it so much. Anyway, show up on the roof. Jasper, everybody, sort of grabs up there, tries to get Mark back. Jasper does manage to get Mark out of the way and throws him into Victor's arms, and Victor does sort of bear hug him away from the scene. However, Jasper doesn't then get himself GTFO. He decides that he's gonna go for Aurora. Like, he's mad. He's already been under his clan compulsion because of her. Obviously he kept up with her dancing, which is just unacceptable. He is a master moonwalker. We all know this. And he goes in for the bite, right? And he bites into her neck. Problem is, she does the old one too, which is sort of the same thing. Like, as I said, when the Shroud came over the office, then suddenly Rodrigo was gone and down in the parking garage. And that's an ability called Shadow Step. That's, when they took Sanchez and took Mark and then poof, they're not there anymore, they're shadow stepping. I said in older editions, and I think even in the new edition in Cults of the Blood God, in not Cults of the Blood God, Chicago by Night, where these Oblivion powers originally started, there is a description of cults skating it across the labyrinth. So they're still sort of like, but these are like much smaller distances than in older editions, because old La Sombra could just like appear, several hundred miles away. Jasper bites into Aurora. She shadow steps with him while she's attached to her like a little leech, and they're gone. And of course it's a big emotional moment, and Alex Ward even stands up out of his seat and leaves the scene, leaves the studio area where the cameras are, and it's perfect. Everyone freaks out, and that's how the episode ends. It's a perfect cliffhanger, absolutely gorgeous. Mwah, mwah, mwah. The way Jason set that up, I mean, like I said, season 3 is like lightning in a bottle. Like, you're never, like, I don't care what production you're making, And of course, it's so bad to say because I work with the World of Darkness. I love them so much. I don't care what production you're making. This season, I don't know what happened. I don't know what it was in the water in LA during season 3, but it's just such a magical season. The way things just shook out, it was just fantastic. I run my own games. Obviously, I'll, be the first one to say nowhere near at this level, right? But I'm always the first one to say that first seasons are the roughest seasons because everyone's still getting the vibe and getting to know each other. I don't know if there's any season of anything, unless you're only doing one season, that's as good as later on. Season 2 is leaps and bounds better than season 1, and season 3 is like perfect. It's perfect. I truly believe that if 4 and 5 were done in the same way that they did for Geek and Sundry. I'm also not a person who likes to run live games, so I don't think they needed to do it live. And I think the players having a week in between to sort of decompress and come back fresh was probably better than the way 4 and 5 shook out, but we'll talk about that when we talk about seasons 4 and 5. Okay, don't mind. I have a cough drop in my mouth because I also think I'm getting a little sick from my Christmas party girl ways. Jasper's gone. And there's going to be a few episodes in between before we find out what happened to Jasper. And I'm sure, now I started watching LA by Night right before season 4 was about to premiere. So I'm sure it was torture having to wait, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks before finding out what happened to Jasper. Brilliantly evil by Jason, by the way, to do that. As a storyteller, I'm 100% approved. I love it so much. The next 2 episodes are super interesting, not super relevant to the plot overall, but super duper interesting. So we have Play the Devil and Beauty and Decay. Now, Play the Devil is a Camarilla episode, let's call it, where it's Prince Vannevar, his seneschal Suzanne, then we have Garrick, who's a Tremere who works directly for Strauss, and we have Therese Vorman, and we have Ebe. Right? So this is where Ebe first appears as a kindred. The episode, we very much learn that Vannevar is totally off his rocker. And I think at this point, there have been little there's little epilogues that happen at the very end of the episodes, sort of like vignettes. We've learned that Therese has been manipulating Vannevar with her disciplines. Now, this is a little homebrew stuff again from Jason. In the olden days, in the Legacy lore, dementation was its own discipline. It wasn't an amalgam power between dominate and obfuscate, where you could basically make people as crazy as you feel. You could make people as crazy on the outside as you felt on the inside as a Malkavian. That's the easiest way to put it. And she's been using that old school dementation on Vannevar, where she's making him literally nuts. Now, we never learn what her ultimate goal of doing this was, but I think, as I stated before, in season 2, when Therese was laying out her plan of being let's play ball with the Camarilla, let's tell them we want to join them, let's, do the subterfuge thing, and we will break them from within. That's literally what she's doing. She's just doing it all by herself because no one was there to back her. And honestly, slay, girl. I think she was literally trying to make Vannevar crazy for one of 2 things to happen: for the Camarilla to implode because their leadership is breaking down with him, or to have him be crazy and under her control enough for him to just say, fuck LA, I'm going back to San Francisco, or I'm going somewhere else. Or any other possibility of things that could happen when a leader is totally deranged, right? So she's there. And, they're trying to offer her a primogen position, and she's sure, she's great. And she's very, she's totally perfectly playing into the idea that she has no idea what's going on with Vannevar. And Suzanne is doing everything that she can to make it seem like Vannevar is just this genius, this eclectic genius that no one understands how smart. That's why he is acting so strange, because no one can understand his genius. She's just dying over there, honestly, for him to act normal again, the way he did when they first met him in season 2, when they first went to Elysium. And again, Ebe is also there. Ebe is the new sheriff. She's a La Sombra now, and she's gone through all her embrace. She's gotten her reward, and she has been declared the sheriff of the Camarilla. And of course, this episode is great. We get really great lines like "fill him with gold," where he's talking about killing Sanchez. All he cares about is money. So he's literally stuff him full of gold. Very, Mesopotamian, as Garrick says. And they do discuss briefly Jasper. They talk about Jasper's capture and how he has some things on him that Strauss might find interesting. And one of those things is, of course, the ring Eva gave him. There is it's something that Strauss would definitely recognize. So we do get some tidbits of that. Of course, it gives us the information that Jasper is not final dead, so that's good. They also talk, I think, briefly about the ley lines, and when they mention the ley lines, Suzanne is like, "Oh, I remember that, but like I can't like pull the information appropriately out of my own brain." And moving into the next episode, Beauty and Decay, Jason sort of explains that like, although vampires can live for a very, very long time, they still have the brain capacity of human beings, and human beings, forget things all the time, and they don't remember, like things that happened many, many years ago, they can't see as clearly as through a glass darkly, right? So, and it works that way with vampires too. Like after so many hundreds of years, you start forgetting small details or even big details about things that happened when you were a very young vampire, or even when you were a mortal. So old vampires can do a thing called Memorium, where they can it's sort of like self-imposed torpor, and they go and revisit a memory. Is the memory exactly the way it was? No, it's more mechanically fun for the players to do, because the players can then play other characters, so like they won't look exactly the same, as the way it happened in the memory, but they'll play the characters of the vampire's memory. And that's exactly what happens in Beauty and Decay. This takes place during, just at the very, very, very beginning of the French Revolution, the first powder keg spark, right? The storming of the Bastille. And it's interesting, Annabelle plays Marie Antoinette, a ghoul of Francois Villon, who is the Prince of Paris at the time. I think there was a prince before Francois. I think another, it could have been a Toreador or a Venture, actually, I don't remember. But they were like courts of love, courts of chivalry and love, something like that. And what's also interesting is I remember watching it and going like, I'm fairly certain Francois, after, I think it was when Napoleon became emperor, is when Francois took over France. So again, you can, I'm like 99% sure I'm right about that, but I don't know. Look it up for yourself. Google's free, I guess. I don't feel like it. I'm tired. I drink a lot of alcohol and I work to my makeup and my face is really itchy. Probably because I'm allergic to the makeup that I bought, because I'm allergic to everything, so I can't have tattoos. There's some more honey lore for you. So, but again, you can explain that away with Memorium, where things aren't exactly correct. I'm sure Suzanne at some point met Francois. I think canonically Francois wasn't prince until after Napoleon became emperor of France, till after the revolution, but that's neither here nor there. And it's a super interesting episode. It's super cool. It's not super relevant. Like I can go through the other people who they play. Hang on. Vannevar plays himself, right? And this is the first time Suzanne and Vannevar meet. Cynthia Marie plays one of my favorite NPCs, favorite signature characters from VTM, the La Sombra Lucita de Aragon. She's a fantastic character. She's the daughter of a king. She was around when the first Anarch revolt happened, when her clanmates all went off and, diablerized La Sombra, who doesn't actually have a name. Just like the Samitsi Antediluvian doesn't have a name either. They just called him the eldest, or called them the eldest, whatever. She is extremely high up in the Sabbat, but she's like, she was like nominally part of the Sabbat. Like she didn't run over and join the Camarilla out of fear that her clanmates would like straight up kill her. And that's like a fair enough point. But also like, if you read like the clan novels and like some of the other like books that she's in, like you can tell like she was never like super into like the ideology of the Sabbat. Like she's wavered on that over the centuries that she's been alive, where she's been more or less into it depending on her mood at that century. She's also like canonically bisexual, which we love. We don't love that she was ever in a romantic relationship with Jan Pieterzoon. I always want to say Pietersnoon because that makes more sense in my German brain, but it's Dutch, not German, because he is the worst. Someday, I'll make a video about the VTM or World of Darkness characters I hate the most, and his name is going to be at the fucking top. I hate him. Like, he's dead. Canonically, he's dead. In 5th edition, they killed his ass, and they murked him, and I'm so happy about that. He supposedly died along with Hardestad I spit, that's how much I hate him, at the Conclave of Prague. I hate that man more than I've ever hated any fictional man in my life. He's the worst, and you're not meant to hate him. I don't think so. I don't think he was written so that you would hate his fucking guts. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in so much, like, stuff. Never read his clan novel, ever. Someday I'll make a video, like, in more detail of how much I hate him. But I'll have to be real careful about how I talk about him, because the things that he does will get me demonetized fast. Anyway, she has a terrible sire, Lucida, and she's also, like, buddies with, buddies with Beckett. They have like a love-hate relationship, but like also they're like frenemies. I love it. And I believe Lucida's still alive in Modern Nights, or at least there's never been any indication in the 5th edition novels that she's, 5th edition books that she's not. B. Dave plays Karsh, who is the warlord of the Camarilla. That's an old Dark Ages title. Well, not Dark Ages, but like slightly after Dark Ages, because there was no Camarilla in the Dark Ages. After the 15th century title. He's a gangrel, he's an elder gangrel. I don't really know his background because it's different depending on what you read. And I think that's intentional. I think he like doesn't really talk about himself, so like there's just a bunch of other kindred, like chroniclers kindred, because there's a few chronicler kindlers like Aristotle de Laurent and stuff who just like write, Beckett who just like write shit down. But he's pretty cool. He's an elder gangrel. He's done a lot of stuff like in the 90s or the late 90s or early 2000s, towards the end of the 20th anniversary edition. Justicar Xavier, who was the Justicar for the gangrel and for the Camarilla, was like, we gotta bounce because when the Sabbat invasion happened and the Final Night stuff was happening, the Week of Nightmare stuff, the Camarilla basically, like, they have this idea in the Camarilla of like high clans and low clans, like at least in Legacy lore, and I think those lore sheets still exist in 5th edition, where Gangrel and Bruja and stuff have always been low clan because they're not sophisticated. They're not sophisticated and, you know, civilized like us. There's such a fucking God, the Camarilla is the worst. And so, like, Gangrel have always been considered low clan, which is crazy. Like, on paper, I get what you mean, but, like, why are you antagonizing clans that support you when you have, you know, at this point in time, you have, like, the Sabbat who just want to, like, tear you open a new asshole. It doesn't really matter what the fuck clan you are. But for some reason, Karsh, I guess because he'd been in the Camarilla so fucking long and like had great loyalties to like the princes that he served, he stayed. And Theo Bell took offense to that personally. Theo Bell, who sort of like kicked off this new War of Ages, the second sort of spreading anarch revolt. I mean, technically the revolt in LA is the second revolt, but like widespread revolt that's kicked off now in the Modern Nights called the War of Ages. He took personal offense to that. He's the guy that blew off Hardstadt's head, the leader of the Camarilla's head in Prague. And he like kicked it, which is crazy. I don't know if he had help. I actually can't remember, but he somehow staked Karsh and threw him into the Atlantic, which is crazy because Theo Bell was embraced like in the mid 19th century. And Karsh was embraced long centuries before that. So like Theo Bell's just either Theo Bell had help and I don't remember, or Theo Bell's just that much of a badass, which he is. Raw. Next question. So yeah, those are all the people who are sitting at the table of this sort of memoriam. And it's great. It's great to see Alexander Ward in a powdered wig. One of those drawn on foppish moles. It's perfect. It's an absolutely perfect episode. But the point of the episode is to find out about the ley lines, right? And they meet Zelios. They're running away from the French Revolution, which is being furthered, assisted by the Sabbat, who are sort of taking advantage of the chaos to their own ends, as the Sabbat tend to do. And so they attempt to escape underneath the palace, into the catacombs, and down there Zelios is building a labyrinth because that's what he does. And I've talked about Zelios before. He's a master mason. He's been around. He's around in the Dark Ages. He is an old ass vampire. He's very into geomancy, sort of like the idea of God, sort of like Chaldunic sorcery, right? It's sort of like the idea of like the natural magics of the earth and stuff, and he uses that in his own architecture. He's a very interesting character. You should absolutely look him up. And he has his own lore sheet in 5th edition as well for Descendant of Zelios. They run into him and they run into ley lines. There are ley lines underneath the palace in Versailles. And so he talks to her, Suzanne, about the ley lines, and then she wakes up from her memoriam and she's like, I remember what ley lines are now. They're sort of these natural occurring, magical things that congregate in certain specific places around the world, under the ground, and they can be used to manipulate areas above the ground. And they're very important. They can be used to control the city. All the anarchs are in Maharani. You can use the ley lines, see parts of the city, and you can just bring that building down on top of them, and then boom, your problems are solved, right? Or if the anarchs have control of them, as Jasper supposedly does, then, he can use that to bring down the Camarilla, right? That's the basic premise there. So she's like, got it. So finally we come to the episode where everyone has been waiting a couple of weeks now for, where they rescue Jasper. And it is a full frontal It's a full frontal episode. It's the full Monty episode. No, it's a really great episode. Eva's there, and basically everyone pools all of their resources in order to save them. They have enough contacts to sort of figure out that, I mean, at one point, like, Nellie had a bloodstone on Jasper, but she was only able to follow that till they got into the car and drove off, and then she couldn't follow it anymore. So she pulls on Abrams to get, like, actual, like, tactical SWAT people, I don't know, some sort of mercenary group that he has on speed dial to help out here. She also has Greg to help. Eva, of course, has her blood sorcery. Annabelle has the Valkyries, but they're split. She's also leading the SWAT mercenary team from Abrams. Victor has like lights set up at the Hollywood sign, which is where that they are. He has like he rented a helicopter. I mean, it's crazy. It's just like a crazy full frontal assault trying to get Jasper back. And Jasper is indeed found to be strung up to the Hollywood sign, and he's going to be there until sunrise, where he's going to burn. And it's very clearly a way of drawing the Anarchs out. I just don't. But the Camarilla didn't bring a bunch of backup because I don't think they expected the coterie to go full war games on them. Or it's just Rodrigo and Aurora there for the most part. I think there's a couple of other people there. I think one of them is a gangrel. There's a couple of other Camarilla, like unnamed Camarilla NPCs there, but they did not bring the numbers that the Anarchs did. And through much turmoil, everyone gets a little hurt, everyone gets very hungry, but Eva is able to use she's using a combination of blood sorcery, she's using essence of air, so she's levitating, she's also using obfuscate, which apparently she learned from Jasper. Ooh. Also, she's using movement of the mind, right, which is another ritual that's old thaumaturgy, right? Telekinesis, let's call it. So yeah, she's using multiple blood sorceries all at once, trying to maintain them all at once. And Jason is putting her through her paces. Jason is making Josephine do all those checks to keep that all. And she almost gets Jasper's body scissored in half by the helicopter blades, but thankfully doesn't. And Nellie helps as well. Nellie has corrosive vitae, so Nellie's and Kling of the King says a blood sorcerer really came in clutch in this episode, and climbing up the side of the Hollywood sign and burning her blood through those chains to get him down. I mean, it was a really, really cool effort, and Annabelle was keeping everyone busy on the ground. Victor was very safe. Victor was the most safe. Victor was up in the helicopter with Greg, I believe, and also had Campbell down somewhere as well with like big headlights to like keep the Lasombra from using their Oblivion powers, because it does not work, obviously, in light when there's no shadow around them. And they save him just as the sun is going up. And Jason keeps the tension very high, because he's like, I don't know if this is going to work out, guys. He has everyone basically on a timer. Like, they have until the break to save Jasper, and if they don't, they don't. And I mean, watching it for the first time, your heart races. It's an incredible feeling. Jason keeps the scene so tight. You know, he's just going like person by person. What are you doing? Here's what happens. What are you doing? Here's what happens. You know, and it's just, I mean, it's thrilling. Honestly, it's a masterclass to watch. So you have to give huge props to Alex throughout the second half of the episode, because he's there, he's in his seat, but he's in torpor, right? So he can't move and he can't talk, he can't see or anything like that. And so he's just sitting there for like, I don't know, almost 90 minutes like this. I'm in torpor. And it's perfect. It's so good. I mean, such a commitment to the character. Oh god, I felt so bad for him watching that after everything that just happened, because like there's so much unnecessary scenage going on in the second half. I don't really know why. You know, I understand that like they're all vampires and they want to eat and they want to heal, but I'm like, those things can, you know, there's no present danger at the moment. Like, those things can be done. We need to get Jasper up, because if there is present danger coming, you really don't want a torpid vampire just hanging, because they're like, well, what are you gonna do then? You know? But yeah, it's just long and lengthy. Even feeding scenes with Annabelle talking, you know, consensually to feed off of ghouls and this, that, and the other thing. And you could just see Josephine's in there just like tittering, just like waiting to wake up Jasper. And of course, Alex just committing to the bit and just, you know, totally out of it. But yeah, eventually they figure out that the ring on Jasper that Eva had given him is still on his finger, and it's got blood sorcery on it. So like Strauss, again, it makes it's so funny, because Strauss is so much older than these other kindred, and they're like, if they're going to figure out a way to, well, if they do figure out a way to save him, well, I'm at least going to send him a message. He's so awesome. I love Strauss. It's the worst. So Eva figures out that he and her have the same blood potency, which is like blood potency 2. So like she heightens her blood, and and Jason talks about a little bit about Eva's background, about how she's like been fighting to climb up the ladder of humanity, slipping down and climbing back up again. And it's just a beautiful scene of Jasper describing Eva's journey into being who she is as opposed to who she was, aka the Crimson Petal. We don't really get to, oh God, sucks. We don't really get to explore what that is. Like, we don't, like, the details of which, like, the implication is...
Because of the implication.
The implication is that Eva was, like, much more into being a vampire and all of the things that entails being a vampire in the before time. That she was, much more bigger fan of getting bloody and slutty than she is now. And I would have loved to have those things explored at some point. In her own Memorium, perhaps, if she's, she might not be old enough to do a Memorium, but it would have been awesome. I would have loved it. But yeah, eventually she feeds him her blood, and she doesn't, lose any hunger, which is awesome. And she pulls the stake out, and he does wake up. And it's this beautiful scene of Jasper coming to a realization, having a lot of heavy, heavy, heavy feelings. People died. Some of those SWAT team people died. The Valkyries, I think it was just Rodrigo who was at the Hollywood sign. The Camarilla were not sending their best to go deal with Jasper, which I think they weren't expecting that. They were expecting a war, basically, in front of the Hollywood sign, and that's just not what they got. And so she had the Valkyries go and start raiding storehouses and, like, businesses, like places of the Camarilla, and, like, they got jumped, and they got ganked real bad. They got murked by Aurora and her shadow tendrils, and I think only 2 of the Valkyries make it out, but we'll talk about that later. And Jasper, realizing the people died for him, and I'm sure also that his coterie, that, he's so self-loathing and he hates himself so much. I think it probably also just hit him all at once that all of these people who, a coterie is a coterie, but they care about him a lot more than just what he can do for them. And they risked a lot to save him. And I think all of those emotions combined, the self-loathing and also just the gratitude probably as well, even if he doesn't want to admit it, just, boiled up and spilled out into this beautiful scene of him just like moaning and whining and crying, and having a little mini mental bee, mentee bee, right there in front of everyone. It's beautiful. It's, Alex, I mean, they all bring things to the table, right? Every single person that is in LA by Night brings something to the table, whether they're there for a long time or for a short time. Alex just has this way about him, especially playing the monster that he is, and the monster that hates himself, and the monster that hates what he is and hates the world that he lives in. It's so edgy, right? such an edgelord. I love him. He brings so much depth to the character that it's just, you can't take your eyes off of him when he's on screen. It's why there's a Jasper talk. It's why on TikTok, Jasper Hartwood has his own hashtag. People absolutely love the character because Alex just does him so well, and never better than in this episode. And when he wakes up, he then realizes Eva is there, and immediately his first inclination is to check and make sure she's okay. It's extremely romantic, and everyone in the coterie can now see how close they've really gotten. Just none of them were super aware of. Maybe Annabelle had the most inclination towards that because she tends to be a little bit more emotionally insightful than everyone else because she's still so very young, connected to humanity. But they can, and they can, it's confirmation now that Jasper is really deeply in love with Eva, right? And I would venture to say that Eva feels the same way about him. Is it the most healthy love? No, but we're talking about vampires. So that's neither here nor there. Hollywood ending absolutely has to be one of my favorite episodes of the entirety of LA by Night. 2 of my favorite episodes of LA by Night come from season 3. It's that good. Lightning in a bottle. Have I mentioned that? Oh, but perhaps the most important thing that happens at the very, 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 very end that really won't pay off until season 5. Greg takes Nellie aside and says, like, hey, got word, because in the vignettes at the end, Greg has been sort of pretending that he, has been communicating with the new a wave of Second Inquisition hunters. Greg and his team originally went rogue, but I don't think it's because like they were like, look, vampires are real and we need to go get them. And everyone at the FBI was like, no. I think what it was is via their job, they discovered that these blanks were real, and no one in, whatever SAD or whatever department they were part of was like willing to let them be on a team or willing to let them go and take, go to out in the field is what I think it is. Because they bring Greg in to sort of help them get a foothold here in LA. And Greg is sort of, he's playing both sides, so he always comes out on top. No, I'm kidding. He's very much on the side of Nellie, but he's trying to like give them as much false information as possible. And he goes to Nellie and he says, I've been doing this. And Nellie's like, oh my God. And he's like, yeah, I know, but I've been trying to keep you safe and feed them false information. But what I do know is they are calling for reinforcements, and they're calling for something called First Light. Now, First Light is not like a nuclear option, but it is like the highest commanding presence within government agencies. They don't really have to worry about like governments, like, like obviously they don't want the people to panic, right? But they can sort of like go around like government, like regulations and like police and stuff, because they are present in many investigative agencies, government agencies all around the world. So like when First Light is called in, usually that's because they are going to do a culling. Usually because the supernatural presence has become so apparent to, mortals, to the regular folk, to the media, whatever, has become so apparent that they need to be called in, and they need to basically do as much of a culling as they can. First Light was London, First Light Vienna. So yeah, but that won't play out until season 5. Okay, Happy New Year. Christmas is over. It's freezing cold in my apartment, so I'm wearing my biggest, gayest sweater and also a hat. Skin's doing great. Thanks for asking. Anyway, back to talking about LA by Night. So after Jasper is rescued, Annabelle or Erika Ishii is not available for the next 2 episodes, so Josephine sits at the table for the next 2 episodes, and the next episode right after Hollywood ending takes place the exact same night. They get a visit from Gary Golden. As I've said a million times, my favorite exchanges are when it's just everyone sitting down having a chit chat. But the really only pertinent thing that gets talked about with Gary Golden is that Eva makes a deal with Gary for wards, right? Wards that she can put around the Hollywood Forever Cemetery in exchange for finding out where Strauss is, right? And this is sort of our first glimpse into getting to look at who Eva was before she was the Eva that we know, when she was Evangeline, let's say. And we'll find out why she's called Evangeline, or like, we haven't heard that name yet, but that'll come and play later. But she was a very different Tremere, a very different person before she was the Eva that we know, the Witch of Griffith Park, right? And this little bit unhinged or a little bit Jasper-esque, let's say, behavior from her is pretty apparent, where she like wants Strauss, she wants to kill Strauss. And there's even moments where Jasper is trying to covertly calm her down, and she's just like not having it. And she does give him a talk afterwards that he needs to stop throwing himself into danger. Now, when I first watched it, I was like, toxic romantic. But it's less that I've noticed on subsequent rewatches. It's more like, look, I love you, and maybe I'm a little obsessed with you. If you throw yourself into danger, if you get captured again, or if, anything bad happens, Strauss finds you and does something to you, I am going to come after you no matter what, even to the detriment of myself and or others, which goes against the way Eva really feels about how she should live her own life. She has these traits. I'm not sure what to call it, really. This unhinged, this obsession. The person that she was in love with before Jasper, the person who turned her, was also like there was unhealthy elements of their relationship, and it's just something that she's drawn towards. And as a BPD girly, relatable content. I love Eva. I always switch between Eva and X for being my favorite character. It depends on which day, but today it's Eva. As I mentioned, the Valkyries were decimated by Aurora, who wasn't there at the Hollywood sign battle. Using the distraction with Jasper as an attempt to further weaken the Camarilla, she sent the Valkyries to go raid a storehouse. Aurora was waiting for them, right? They got wind of it somehow, and Aurora just decimated most of them. Only Casey and Sycorax, who are the 2 Valkyries that we have already met, made it out unalive. Sycorax is in torpor. Casey is okay. So they talk to Casey, and Casey, is pissed off and wants to talk to Annabelle. But of course, Annabelle's not there. Annabelle's gone with Mark doing something. Don't know what. We'll find out in a little bit. And so they sort of recruit her to go after Rodrigo. I actually forget. This is an episode where there's certain parts of this episode I'm really into, and certain parts like I sort of tuned out. The stuff with Casey, I just sort of tuned out about it because it's super. I mean, again, if you had asked me like a couple of years ago when this was still on the air, right before LA by Night ended, I would have put stock into certain things, but now knowing where the story goes and where it ends, whatever happens with the Valkyries is completely inconsequential. But basically they figure out that Rodrigo is in Griffith Park, he's injured, and they're doing a digging thing by where that guardhouse or I'm not sure, forest ranger house where Nellie's sister was taken, where Petronella and Antonio were digging around. So they recruit Casey to come, and this is also they you know, and there's always these scenes sort of where Jason sends them to a thing where he lets them, like, you know, feed and take melee weapons or firearms or whatever. This is sort of where we get confirmation that Eva has a particular fondness for feeding off of people who have imbibed, right? So she feeds off of Bailey, who is someone who got injured, and I actually can't remember how he got injured, but the point is Bailey is on Oxycontin. Or he's on some sort of opioid for the pain. He's like in a sling and he's like got, you know, like bruises and stuff. He's on some sort of opioid. And Eva, you know, wants to feed off of him because he's been taking that, you know, so just to chill her out a little bit. And that's where we get the first hint of that, and that'll get explored a little bit more in the second episode, or the next episode after this. They head over there. Victor uses his awesome abilities of just presence and his affability, his charisma, to get a lot of the workers away, of course using the power again of his presence and dominate, and they just all take off, leaving just Rodrigo there to deal with them. And Eva showcases a really awesome ability that she has. Again, it is a legacy power. It's not in 5th edition. It's called Path of the Leavenbolt. Basically allows you to use your own vitae in order to conjure lightning. Now, I know that sounds... There are certain things that, like, when you say it out loud, it sounds extra goofy. But Legacy Edition just had a lot going on. A few editions before 5th edition, and they, you know, by the 20th edition, which was the edition that came before 5th, that was just packed full of so much stuff, especially blood sorcery, or thaumaturgy as it was called back then. There were paths, crazy paths for like everything. And one of them was making lightning with your body. So she basically creates lightning in her own body and sends it out via the fingertips and just roasty toasty princesses Rodrigo. He goes into torpor immediately from such an impact, and Jasper finishes him off, drinks him dry as he is disintegrating. But here we also see, again, as I've mentioned, there is this conflict happening within Eva where she kept herself isolated and away from vampire politics. Again, I'm assuming to keep herself from becoming who she was, that she worked very hard to become sort of this stoic, calm, wise white witch, let's call it, and she is falling back into the old patterns of the person that she was when she was first embraced, or the person who the Tremere made her to be in Vienna when she was still a young fledgling. And she feels terrible that she killed another vampire. Now, I've seen, so there are certain people who go like, well, what's the big deal? You just killed a vampire. Who cares? That doesn't affect your humanity. Mechanically doesn't affect your humanity. No, mechanically it doesn't affect your humanity, but story-wise, roleplay-wise, character-wise, of course that would affect Eva. Eva is not a person who wants to be a murderer. She doesn't want to kill people, right? Even her feeding type, although she prefers to feed off of people, she has a flaw, like a junkie flaw, where like she has a certain disadvantage if she doesn't feed off of people who have imbibed. She is also still a consensualist, so she still wants to ask permission from the people that she feeds from, just like Annabelle. So she has a very high moral attitude about that, and killing even Rodrigo makes her feel not good. And she does have a little bit of a mini breakdown, a mini mentee bee in Jasper's arms. So now that there's time, now that the house isn't falling apart, Victor and Nellie head off over to where they were digging, where Petronella and Antonio originally digging, and where all these humans that were hired by the Camarilla are digging, and they find a box, an old looking, probably 19th century looking, 18th century looking box, and they take it back to the Maharaja. Now some time passes the next night, or next couple of nights, whatever. Everyone's back. Again, Annabelle is still gone, so it's Eva again. And they look at the box, they research the box, and they find out that Nellie's necklace, this necklace that she always wears, and you can actually see it in the picture here, has indents for that exact necklace. And this is something that's been in her family for a really long time. And it is that necklace that opens the box. And inside the box is a key. And this key also happens to correspond to, and I'm sure I mentioned this, actually maybe I didn't, oopsies. When Jasper's been researching the labyrinth, he found Zelios's notebook. I think I mentioned that, the master mason who built the labyrinth, the blah, blah, blah. And that key has to, there's some sort of correspondence to that key and Zelios's notebook. And there is a deduction that happens where Jasper thinks that that key can fit into the mirror. What the key does, we won't really ever know, I guess. It does come into play a little bit later in the next season, but really what that key is for, I don't think we'll ever really know any specific details about it. So they want to go down to the labyrinth and see what that key does, see what it does when you turn it, put it into the mirror, and they call the Weird Sisters to go and meet them there because Hester is very, knowledgeable about that kind of stuff, so they call the Weird Sisters, come meet them. So same procedure as every year, James. Sorry, that's a reference only Germans will get.
Sherry with the soup, yes. By the way, the same procedure as last year, Miss Sophie?
The same procedure as every year, James.
Same procedure as every year, James, and the sherry.
There's sort of this thing of like feeding and getting supplies before they go, blah, blah, blah. So Jasper asks about Eva's feeding preference. He notices that she's like really like, woo, I'm all in the ether, man, the whole time because she fed off of someone who clearly did some sort of hallucinogens. And so he asks about that and she lets him know, like, she doesn't have to feed off of someone who's, part imbibed, but it makes her feel better. So Jasper lets her know that he's a blood leech and she's like, oh, I'll give you some more blood. And he's like, no, that's all right. I won't because like, I'll eat you. Also, he doesn't want to, he looks at that. He looks at being a vampire as being something super negative. So he doesn't want to like put his own burden onto Eva. That is when he decides to tell her that he is a blood leech, so he does feed off Kinder Vitae, and what he does is he takes bad people off the street, makes them not people, and then he lives off of them for a little while. Those are all his words, direct quotes from that episode. Of course, when this conversation eventually spills over where Nellie and Victor are present for the conversation, so they learn that he's doing this as well. And as I said, they already knew that he was a blood leech. They already knew like that he kept people in cages for Baron Abrams and would feed off of them from time to time. They already know all that. I guess they just didn't question where the blood would come from when there were no prisoners for the Baron. I guess no one questioned that. Maybe they didn't want to, or maybe they're vampires, so they're kind of like inherently selfish and wrapped up in their own bullshit, so they didn't even think about it. But yeah, doing that is a horrific one. You can't do that. Like, there are rules in the Camarilla, like strict traditions in the Camarilla where it's like you can't embrace anybody without the permission of a prince. And like, depending if you're a Tremere, usually the Tremere are like, yeah, well, we have one more layer to that. You have to get permission from like the regent of the Chantry, and then you have to get permission from the prince. Like, you have to do there's multiple forms that need to be filled out here, and if you break those rules, like if you ever played Bloodlines, for example, you're embraced like right in the beginning of Bloodlines, and then immediately you're taken by the Camarilla, who are like, maybe gonna cut your head off because you are an illegal child of some Camarilla vampire. Can't do it. And again, anarchs are a little bit less stringent. They don't stick to those traditions. They don't consider themselves Camarilla. You can make the argument that they're a little bit like Camarilla light, but in general, you don't go willy-nilly embracing people unless you, one, are a baron, because then you sort of have leeway to do what you want in your own domain, or you have to ask the baron. You have to get permission from the baron to do that. Now, Annabelle was embraced without permission from Baron Abrams, and from a vampire who is not like part. I mean, I think Carver is supposed to originally be from Los Angeles, but he's not like part of Los Angeles's, domain. Goes everywhere, wherever he feels like. And he embraced Annabelle, but there was no like calling of a blood hunt for Carver, from Abrams. And he also didn't like immediately want to cut Annabelle's head off. He wanted to, just make sure that she was brought into the domain. So again, they're Camarilla light. They have their own rules. Like, Abrams wasn't happy about this. This is not how things should go, but he's not gonna like fly off the handle like a prince might, right? There's the difference there. For sure, if Abrams, or even Victor Victor technically isn't Jasper's Baron. Technically, it's still Abrams at this point. If Abrams knew that Jasper was doing this, there is no way that he wouldn't call for some sort of blood hunt equivalent on Jasper, because that is just not okay. That is a huge masquerade violation. I understand that in America, and especially a city like Los Angeles, there's lots of violent crime and there's lots of people who get murdered, and that's a pretty common occurrence. I get all that, but still, that is just not something that you want to welcome. It's something that you want to bring in, because these people aren't just dying, they are disappearing. They are disappearing, and that's just so bad. You know, and Eva's completely unhappy and shocked, tells Jasper to not do that anymore. I mean, Nellie and Victor are still supportive of Jasper to varying degrees. They like don't want him to do it anymore either, but they're not quite as upset as Eva is. So they get to the labyrinth. They meet up with, I think, Violet Luna's not there, just Kyoko and Hester are there. And they meet up and they head down to the labyrinth. They take them down there, you know, and of course we go through the whole thing again where, you know, it's very MC Escher-esque and like Eldritch Nightmare-like down there and stuff like that. And that's when they become aware that they are not alone in the labyrinth, that there's already people down there. And they are specifically inspecting the mirror. And it is Strauss and a gaggle of Tremere, including a Tremere named Garrick, who I talked about in the episode where it's the Camarilla episode where there's Camarilla gathering. And Aurora's there. Yay! Aurora the Scourge is there too. And she's super into the mirror because she's like, I feel a kinship with this mirror. And she feels a kinship with this mirror because, as I've previously stated, this mirror is all about oblivion. It's all about that oblivion, baby. Which is, again, something that innately Lasombra can tap into. They have a nice little chit chat with Strauss. And Strauss, you know, is intimidating, but polite. And it's very scary. And of course, Jasper's super unhappy that they're there. He's super scared. Of course, we know Strauss enchanted the ring that Eva gave him, and he like put blood sorcery on like an earring, and he's like, you know, you like, again, we don't know what his plans were. We don't know. It will never be confirmed to us. He's super menacing and scary. Eva's clearly, you know, both angry and scared. Jasper is both angry and scared. Victor is the only one really trying to keep everything calm and cool and collected. Nellie stays pretty much silent, letting Victor handle things. Like, honestly, the smartest move you could make right now. Except, like, caveat, though. Sometimes Victor does put his foot in his mouth, but I think that's part and parcel to being a Venture. You could talk yourself right into getting your own head chopped off. Victor makes a deal with Strauss, basically, to, like, you know, let them leave. You're not going to cause any issues, and like they can go, you know, investigate the mirror and the ley lines and this stuff. And like Jasper and Eva are like not okay with this. Now, this has been a really weirdly contentious point in the community. I'm going to throw my 2 cents in here, but I promise it's not going to be a super hot take. Nuance is important, and it's possible for 2 people to be both right and both wrong at the same time. I know, shocking. We're sort of entering, I've noticed, let me just go off a tangent here. I'm sort of noticing, as I spend a lot of my time on social media, both for work and for pleasure, I guess, we're entering into this strangely puritanical thing where like a call out culture and like how everything has to, like, you know, you have to hold yourself up to a really rigid standard of this is purely good and this is purely evil, and there's no crossover, no nuance to anything anymore. You know, and not to say that there aren't things that are objectively deeply evil, but when it comes to things like this, where we're talking in a role-playing aspect and talking of a fake scenario with creatures that don't exist and magic and storylines that aren't real, it's possible for things to be both right and wrong. Victor makes this deal with Strauss to leave them alone, let them leave. Eva and Jasper are not okay with this. More so Eva than Jasper. I mean, Jasper's not okay with this, but Jasper isn't the one who is like actively saying like, nah, you shall not pass, right? But Eva is. Eva is the you shall not pass person in this scenario, right? And Victor is seeing that this is going in a really bad direction because Strauss is getting irritated, and Strauss isn't going to take this guff from someone he considers a subordinate, right? So let's stop it right there. Should Strauss and the Tremere and Aurora be allowed to go through the mirror and be allowed to look into the labyrinth? Well, probably not. It's probably a bad idea because their intentions are probably not great. However, should Eva attempt to stand up to them in this fashion and stop them, knowing that it's very likely going to end up, especially with unhinged Aurora in the background, that it's going to end up with everyone dead, or at least everyone that she cares about dead, and or herself snatched. No, Eva shouldn't do that in the way that she did it. Can you understand why she would? It's been a very rough few nights. Strauss is a particular trigger for her. This labyrinth means a lot to Jasper and by extension herself. She knows the Tremere intimately. She knows Strauss pretty intimately and knows his not so great intentions. So yeah, it's completely understandable why she would do what she did. Would it have gone in a good way? Probably not. Do I think that Jason would have let everyone die in the labyrinth and that would have been the end of LA by Night? No. Storytellers have a lot of ways where they can work around things or insert sort of, let's just, say like sort of ex machina things that they can just sort of jump in to assist, right? So that their players don't die, especially in a big production like this. Victor's reaction to this and him watching, and we were all watching this thing break down a little bit, was to use his dominate to force Jasper and Eva out of the way. And he also had rationalized, so they would think it's their own idea. Now, I'll die on the hill that dominate and presence are the scariest powers that exist in Vampire the Masquerade. Do I think that it was right of Victor to do that? Given the circumstances and what he perceived to be happening, and out of concern both for his own physical safety and for the safety of the other people with him, which means Nellie and Hester and Kyoko, and we'll talk about Kyoko in a second, Eva and Jasper, yes, I believe he's completely justified in doing that. Do I think it was morally right of him to exert his own will over his friends? No. And I don't understand why we can't sit here and go, well, I can see his point of view. I can see why he would think that that is what was the best course of action. Do I agree with it on a moral stance? Not particularly. Do I agree with it of a decision to be made in the moment that, the easiest, the path of least resistance? Yes. And I could sit here with Eva and I go, do I think that it was morally correct of Eva to stand up to Strauss and attempt to stop him physically from getting into the labyrinth? Yes, I do agree with that 100%. Do I think that it was the best possible course of action in consideration of the other people in her party, her friends, and her own well-being? No, I don't think that that was the best course of action. And those things can be true at the same time. What's very odd to me about this interaction is that there is this strange contentious point where either people are Team Eva or Team Victor on this. And I'm like, what? Maybe it's just me. Maybe it's just cynical old Huddy. I am an elder millennial, so I'm like, I do have this sort of this cynicism left over from Gen X inside of me, where I'm like, whatever. So yeah, that's what happens. And Victor is successful in getting them to get the hell out of the way. And Strauss goes through the mirror. Aurora goes through the mirror, but Kyoko wants to go through the mirror too. And Strauss is like, yes, Kyoko. And Hester's not going to stop her. Because Jason's playing Hester, right? And so you sort of have to look to Jason of how he would, as Hester, interact with Strauss. Hester, who has known Strauss longer than Eva has, right? Has been around longer. She, just lets Kyoko go. She's like, that's not a good idea, inside. She's like, I don't want to, but what am I going to do? What am I supposed to do? Say no? So anyway, I think Hester actually goes into the mirror too. So once they go in, Eva and Jasper panic. Nellie and Victor GTFO. They want to get out of the labyrinth. And Jasper just smashes the mirror. Now, here's the thing. Smashing the mirror won't trap them in the nexus of the labyrinth, right? It'll just take them a much longer time to get the hell back out of there. It just gives them more time to run away. I'm not sure what the purpose of it was to do that. To this day, I'm not entirely sure, but it just happened. And before he smashed it, he saw Strauss doing something, a flash of blue, right? Did something to Kyoko. Something happened down there. Don't know what. We will never know. But Hester, some sort of teleportation ability, teleports Kyoko out of there, and Jasper smashes the mirror. Why? I don't know, but he just does. In retrospect, I'm like, this is a really chaotic episode. I don't think this was at all what Jason planned. What I think Jason planned was for everyone to stand up to Strauss, was for there to be a confrontation with Strauss, for there to be a battle in the labyrinth was Jason's intention, is what I think, which is why he was sort of, it says that the Weird Sisters come, a little backup for the coterie, but that's just not the way that it went down. So, and again, that sort of lends support to Eva standing up to Strauss, right? Because I think, although as a person watching it as a player, you're like, this isn't smart, but I think Jason thought that maybe that's where Eva or the Josephine would take that, or maybe the whole coterie would take it that way, or they're like, no, you're violating Jasper's home. And so maybe planned for Battle of the Labyrinth, but I didn't have it that way. So yeah, so they escape, and Strauss communicates with Hester via another blood ritual, or talks to him through a puddle on the floor, and says that like there will be a deal struck, a détente, if you will, between the Camarilla and the Anarchs. That was part of the deal that Victor made. It was like, here, you can look at the labyrinth, but like, we want a truce. We want like, stop the fighting, stop this bullshit of like sniping at each other. We want it done. We want a truce. We want a standstill, whatever. And so that Strauss was like, I'll make sure that happens. And again, you believe that Strauss can, and he does, because he's so much older than Vannevar and Suzanne. Like, you can't believe that he's like 300 years older than them and that he hasn't learned some like diplomatic tactics or whatever. And, you know, of course, Eva's just furious. She's just huge, like, huff and bangs her hands against the table. I mean, she's just so mad, you know, because she's so traumatized, right? Let's all remember how traumatized Eva is. And, like, in general, becoming a vampire is traumatized because you fucking die. That's like a prerequisite to being a vampire. You have to die first and then become back. She's fucking traumatized by, you know, like, we don't know the details of it, whatever happened to her in Vienna with Strauss. We know some details, but not like everything. And this is sort of the end of season 3, which I like to call lightning in a bottle, right? Which is, I consider season 3 to be the pinnacle of LA by Night. Like, this was the best that LA by Night had ever been and would ever be, right? It'll never quite reach that again. And we're going to sort of go down a little bit as season 4 and 5. So we have some vignettes, or it's epilogues rather, that we always do. Now, during these epilogues, little vignettes that are happening, and they seem to be someone Archangel speaking on the radio, someone named Archangel speaking about like vampiric activity on the radio. And it's very clearly Chloe's voice. I think there was like, at the time this was airing, people were like guessing who it was, but it's very clearly supposed to be Chloe, and she's speaking through like a transistor radio type thing where she's, you know, it's like you actually have to tune into this channel. Maybe it's an AM radio. I don't know anything about radios. She's sort of giving out information to whoever's listening about vampiric activity, and she's using real names. She's using real vampires. It's a huge masquerade issue. It's terrible. It's awful. I love it. Super into it. Victor's epilogue is of meeting Eve, and she's like, you know, and this is sort of the reveal to Victor. I don't think Victor tells anybody, but Eve is like, I'm a Sombre now, and I'm sheriff of the Camarilla, and that's sort of the ending. I mean, not the ending of their friendship, but their friendship just like can't be what it was when she was a ghoul. And it really shouldn't be, because like when you're a ghoul, you know, that's a that's a very sketchy area of things, because, you know, when you're a ghoul, you're not totally in control of your own mind and feelings. Not that she was ever Victor's ghoul, but in essence, you're not in control of your own, like, morals and feelings and stuff, because the vampire blood can make you do just about anything that the Dominator wants you to do. And so she sort of lets him know that she's, like, back in Los Angeles, but she's, you know, they can't be friends, not the way that they used to be. And it's just very heartwarming and touching, and there's, you know, hugs to be had, and Eve gets emotional, and B. Dave gets emotional, or Stacey Nora gets emotional, B. Dave gets emotional, and it's just beautiful. It's such a pleasure to watch these two on screen. It goes all the way back to season 1 with their epilogue together, the two of them, and they're just absolutely brilliant on screen together. Next is with Greg and Nellie, where Nellie is supposed to meet up with Suzanne. We learn since season 2, when Suzanne and Nellie had their, I don't know what you want to call it, Suzanne used presence on Nellie to make her fall in love with her, and Nellie like did come to realize that later, but I guess they've Toreador gonna Toreador, I don't know what to tell you. They're still like meeting up and like kissing, probably. I hope so. I hope they kiss a lot. I hope they do more than kiss. My God, someone stop me. And so it's just me with her, but she's like, you know, with Greg and waiting for, you know, to meet Suzanne. And Greg gets sort of, there's an ability called Possession in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition. It's a presence, Auspex ability. Auspex ability. Greg gets possessed by Suzanne really quickly. Vince Casso speaks in a beautiful French accent. It's like one of my favorite epilogues ever. And he's like, oh, Nelly, I can't do it. Oh, Nelly, I can't do it. I can't do a French accent. Je suis pris. He doesn't say, je suis pris. Just to be clear, I'm just being gross and gay. Basically, Suzanne uses Greg. Like, she's like, I can't meet you because like things are dangerous right now. Like, there's a danger in the camera. Like, you know, it's too dangerous for us to be around. There's like a big danger coming. And she's like, but I love you. And like, we're gonna, oh god, it's just a really great epilogue. I can't do it justice because I can only do it justice if I had Vince Casso, like a little tiny Vince Casso right here, like saying all of Suzanne's lines in the French accent again. The next one is Shattered Faith, which is sort of the Jasper and Eva epilogue. They meet up at Griffith Park and they talk about, what Jasper has been doing again, the feeding, and Eva uses movement of the mind and sort of holds him in place. And she's like, you're gonna stop that. You don't do that anymore. You're my boyfriend and you do what I say. And it's just like, it's like Diva. Who is this Diva? Diva Slay. I love it. She basically reads him the riot act and he's like, I agree to your conditions, my lady. Long story long, they make up. They kiss, which, big fan. And then the worst thing that could probably happen ever after making up is Katya arrives, played by Shane Easton. And Katya is Eva's sire, who Eva thought was dead. See, according to Eva, when she was embraced and brought to Vienna, the Tremere were super angry about that because Katya didn't get permission to embrace her lover. And so, according to Eva, she was burned in front of her eyes. But that was apparently not true. How and why and what happened, really, we don't know. But what happened is that Katya was just taken and Stockholmed and gaslit hardcore, man, like the Tremere version of hardcore gaslighting and Stockholm syndroming. Because she's all like, you, Evangeline, you have to come back to the Camarilla, and I'm here for you. And she's super pass-ag and like mean to Jasper. Shane plays a really great villain, if you want to put it that way. Antagonist or like a wedge in the love story of Jeva. It's perfect. It's excellent. It's like one of the best ways that I could think of to like end season. I know there's a couple more epilogues after this, but like end season 3. And Jasper is just so torn up about it. And it turns out that the ring, again, if you couldn't tell by Katya's name, I don't think we know Katya's full name. If we do, I don't remember. But she is of Russian descent. So is Hester, but that's neither here nor there. And the inscription was from Katya. Mabagrovia Libyastok was Katya who wrote that in there because it's Russian, right? Yeah, and it's perfect. I love it. It's like, like they make up and you're like, ew, diddly-loo. But then it's everything's bad again. And so good. So good. The next epilogue after that is Annabelle's epilogue, where we learn that she took Mark to go see Nines. And basically she's like, my boyfriend's going to be in danger forever because he's my ghoul now, and I need you to train him and maybe consider embracing him for me at some point. And this is, again, this is sort of like the thing before in season 2 where the Valkyries were like, kill this guy, please, who is using children to sell drugs. And Annabelle's like, I don't want to kill anyone. Ramona, will you handle this for me? And Ramona says yes for whatever reason. And so sort of the same thing where she's like, I want my boyfriend to be safe, but I don't want to be the one to embrace him. I don't want to be the one to kill him. I want you to do it, Nines. Thankfully, Nines doesn't say like yes immediately. Nines is like, well, we'll like put him in my training program. Like we'll sign him up for a 12-month so 12-month gym membership, and then we'll see what happens. Nine says he'll like, look out for him and like sort of take him on the road to sort of try him out and see how he can handle himself, and then we'll like revisit it, put a pin in it for later. This is also when we learned that Eleanor is not dead, and Eleanor was not embraced by Annabelle. So well, we don't learn that she's not embraced by Annabelle. We learn that she's not dead, but we learn that she's a vampire. And that's as much as Annabelle says about the subject, because Mark does ask, like, where is Eleanor? I think he was expecting maybe when Annabelle, like this is like where Annabelle keeps all of her ghouls. all of her different partners. Eleanor is not in Los Angeles at the moment, and which makes sense because Ramona's not here either. I think she's with Ramona. So Annabelle does reveal to Mark that Eleanor is kindred, but doesn't really say anything else more. But we will learn more about who and where and what Eleanor is. I think in season 5 is where we'll get full confirmation of it. The next one is what we consider Jasper's epilogue. So we had Victor, Nellie, Eva, Annabelle, now Jasper. And we do have one more after this. Jasper goes and he visits the Weird Sisters, and he sort of wants to know about fixing the mirror. He brings like all the pieces of the mirror and stuff over to Hester and see if she can fix it. She does agree to attempt to fix it in exchange for a boon. He also learns and sees that Kyoko, who we get a player for Kyoko finally. Oh, by the way, the player for Hester is Juliet Landau. I should mention, I always forget to mention that for some reason, but Juliet Landau is freaking Drusilla from Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Martin Landau's daughter. I mean, come on. Why wouldn't you watch the show? Sorry. Kyoko also gets Valentino gets a player. Kyoko also gets a player. Faye Mata plays Kyoko, and Kyoko has blue eyes and blue hair, and her palm of flame is now blue, and that's from whatever happened with Strauss. And we know Strauss does things with colors because Eva, who has pale lips and white hair and pale eyes and the whole kit and caboodle, is because Strauss cursed her to be colorless. Now, as I said, when they were looking through the mirror, they saw Strauss doing something that affected Kyoko, a flash, but and apparently it's made her blue. Things about her are blue. What that means, what that would lead to, what the implications of it are, we will never know, unfortunately. So I'm just going to mention it offhandedly because it's not very important, but there you go. I mentioned it. You're welcome. We also get a fun scene where Violet Luna hands Jasper a skull. Basically, the skull turns dark whenever Jasper lies, and they ask him, they don't tell Jasper this, but they ask him a bunch of questions. And they ask, and he starts asking, because he wants to also know about this ring and stuff, and the crimson petal thing, and he wants to know about Katya, these sorts of things. And so Violet Luna is quick on the draw, and she's like, "Are you jealous, Jasper? Are you jealous of Katya?" And he says no, and the skull immediately turns dark because he is, and of course he is. Why wouldn't he be? The sire, who was also Eva's lover before she was a vampire, comes back into her life. She thought she was dead, and there's obviously huge emotions running amok. Katya is older than Jasper, maybe more powerful than Jasper, and he's going to feel all sorts of inadequate now, So, can't blame the poor dude. Life is rough for Jasper Hartwood. The final epilogue is where we learn, again, as I said, in front of all of these vignettes, there is Archangel talking, right, about different things that happened in LA by Night and different things that would pertain to the epilogue that's about to air. And this is X's epilogue. Now, we haven't seen X all season, unfortunately. Missed the boy. X asks to meet Annabelle in an old church, and she does, and he's like, and we already know that he ran away from Therese. He ran away from Santa Monica, and he's been living in the valley, but he has just been completely absent all of season 3. I'm not sure why. If Xander Jeanneret, the actor, had something else going on, but he's been completely absent the whole season. So I was so happy to actually see him in season 3, because he's been tracking Archangel, because he's been hearing these radio broadcasts, and he wants to, find out about it. Annabelle meets him there, and they do end up running into Chloe, and they run into Chloe, and while she's secretly trading secrets with a vampire who gives her Vitae in a thermos, which she drinks. So it's keeping herself young for as long as possible, keeping herself essentially a ghoul, but without a dometer, right? Vampire blood will if a human drinks it from the vein, usually that would make you someone's thrall, right? But if you're drinking it outside of the vein after it's left the body for a few minutes, that sort of magic of it, whatever, leaves it. And so then the blood is just there to keep you young. You need to keep drinking it, just even if you're drinking it from the tap or from a thermos, you need to keep drinking it. But this is Chloe's way of not being bound to anyone, and which is odd, honestly, because she doesn't have, she's unbondable right now for reasons that we'll never know. But it's sort of her, she's also set up a ghoul circulatory system where she provides blood to other ghouls who don't want to have a dometer. So that's fair play. And she gets information from ghouls who do have dometers, so that then she passes on, and she's got her this whole business just worked out here. She's total underground radio host / whistleblower. It's just really cool. It's really gonna get her killed though, right? So X and Annabelle show up, and they find out who she is. Of course, Annabelle recognizes her from a picture that she saw in Jasper's Haven, and Chloe tells them sort of her own version of events of what happened. She's like, yeah, and I was supposed to belong to Eva, but they just abandoned me. They left me, which is not the story that Jasper and Eva tell. But again, Chloe's motivations and why she does what she does and the things that she is thinking, we don't know. It never gets explored. So I really can't make too much speculation about what this is. there's a lot of like weird looks from Chloe when X and Annabelle are talking about her. So I really think that she had some sort of like mission in her mind to like get back together with Jasper, or to like to get an in with like Jasper's coterie or something. And so I really don't know what the motivation here was. I mean, Eva did leave and go to New York, so maybe she did abandon her. I don't know. I don't really know what happened here. I don't know what Jason was planning with all of these strings, but they go nowhere, so it's not super important. But what is important is getting her to stop fucking talking about vampire shit on the radio. So X offers her his own blood that she doesn't have to like risk herself or anything, like getting blood out of a thermos from other people that she doesn't know that could have ill intentions toward her, that could just kill her. So he's like, I'll feed you exclusively my crazy Malkavian blood. As is it called that. And you hang out with me and you give me your secrets from the ghouls and we'll keep you safe and everything. And she agrees to it, which is pretty sweet. And then she packs up her equipment and they take her out of the church, and she still looks all like she's very snidely Whiplash about everything. She's like, perfect, it's all coming together, but we don't know what it is. We don't know what is coming together. We don't know what her plan is because it never gets revealed. So leave your speculation. Leave your guesses of what Chloe's into, because Chloe's like kind of a different person in season 5. I'm just gonna say it. So leave your speculation of what you think Chloe was doing in season 3, what her intentions were, and we'll talk about it more in season 5, I guess. But that is the end of my favorite season of LA by Night. This was the final season that was aired on Geek and Sundry. This was the final season where they did live every week, except for the epilogues. So I think those were pre-recorded. After this, season 4 and 5, those were shot like in a span of a couple of weeks, I don't know if they recorded every day, or like every other day, but they shot that in a span of a couple of weeks. That was like real quick turnover because there wasn't like a standing studio there for them to use, like a Geek and Sundry, right? So there was a rented studio. They rented just for a short amount of time to film the final 2 seasons. New York by Night is the same way, those first 2 seasons. I truly believe that these episodes are so good. Season 1 is sort of little here for me because, but first seasons of things, everyone's still sort of getting the vibe, figuring out what they're doing, so that's whatever. But I think that's so good because having that, God, I couldn't imagine like recording 3-hour, 2-hour sessions like every day. Like that would kill me. Like that would drain me dry. So I think really what happens in the reason why the next 2 seasons are just a little bit like dipped in like role play quality, I want to say, because like the audio and the visual is all fine, but the role play quality is just because I think everyone was a little bit tired, right? There was no refresher. There was no, okay, we did our recording, now a week's gonna go by and I can look forward to it again, or I can, I have a little bit of time, a little bit of rest, a little bit of, time away, whatever it is that you need to like refuel, recharge. And I just think that that's not present in the next 2 seasons. And, it is what it is. It's nobody's fault. They don't have not with Geek and Sundry anymore. They don't have a standing studio that they can just pop in and out of whenever they want to. That's all, what are you going to do? Los Angeles is hella expensive. So that is my favorite season, LA by Night season 3. I think it's a perfect season. I think it's a beautiful season. It's highly, like, if I'm like, pick one season to watch, I'd pick that one, even though you might not know what's going on. It's just the best though. Season 4 and 5, there are lots of things I like about season 4 and 5, which I will talk about when I do those again. Who knows when I'll have time, because I'm a bit busy this year. I have lots of things going on, which maybe if you follow me on social media, you'll learn about. But yeah, thank you so much everyone for watching. These have been so much fun to make. I'm sorry I yap so much, but it's not going to stop. I'm going to continue yapping longer and louder into the future.